Do we have people watching?
About like 4 or 5. Occasionally. I'm going to call the 7th meeting of the 14th Undergraduate Senate to order. I'm going to begin with roll. Senator Flores.
Here.
Senator Rodriguez.
Here.
Senator Hayashi.
Here.
Senator Max Robbins.
Here.
Senator Newlander. Senator Jenkins. Senator Jacobs. Tyler Jacobs. Senator Ossip. Senator Adams. Senator Abisakara. Senator Pacheco. Senator Perez. Senator Sellinger. Senator Zitzman. Senator Tercios. Senator Menashe. Senator Giesler. Senator Butler. Senator Luthra. Senator Jacob Robbins.
Present.
Quorum is met. We'll now move to the adoption of the agenda. This is the current agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, it will be adopted without objection. Moving to the adoption of the minutes, which are being still worked on, but I do have a clerk, so those should be coming out soon. So if you need to look at the minutes, go back to live stream for now. Public comment. Any member of the public wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll move to reports from officers. First, to Case Director Hawk. Did you send me a presentation?
Good afternoon, everyone. I don't have a presentation this time. I was planning on having one, but I had the ACT exam yesterday, and so 4 hours of testing just left me way too exhausted to make PowerPoint. But yeah, I'm just going to keep this short and brief and go over. I took the ACT, by the way, because I retook it for my transfer applications. Unfortunately, I'll be leaving you all. But I'll just go over some brief updates. I'll keep it short and quick, and then I'll take your questions. So the first thing is caseload. So cases continuing to handle a lot of cases. So far this semester, we've had around 20. And then we also had a handful over winter break that I handled personally. And I think that's really good because it's like since August 2018, last semester, we've seen this upward trend. Like all of last semester, I think President Fernandez probably mentioned this in her State of the Student Government speech. We handled around like 50 cases last semester. So we're already close to 20, so we're certainly on an upward trend. The second thing was the academic integrity code. If you all remember, last semester I mentioned how we started working on that with the task force to revamp the code. We also had that survey put out to get student feedback on what they know about the code and what they would like to see different. So at the end of last semester, all of the different groups that are in that task force put together some preliminary policy proposals with like proposed changes to the code. And so Case is starting to look at those now before our next meeting, so we can like look at those preliminary proposals, see what's good, what's bad, what we think the student body would find helpful, and what wouldn't be as helpful. And the deadline for the new code is May 2019, so basically the end of the semester. So we're on track to meet that deadline. The third area was the conduct code. So 2 main points there. The first is I mentioned last semester that we're trying to make the code more accessible for students by having the annotated version put up. That's done. I just need to get in touch with Secretary Bailey so he can publish that. It's probably going to be up on the ASG website, also through social media so that people can like download it onto their laptops, phones, wherever. In addition to that, I've been compiling some data on the biggest areas of the conduct code that students have concerns with. So for example, like one of the big ones is like room searches. Students don't know the procedures relating to that. So in addition to having the annotated conduct code, I'm going to take that data and basically make like mini fact sheets that we can have in our office, and also like digital versions which say like, these are like the areas that students typically have the biggest questions on and greatest confusion on with respect to the conduct code, because I think that would be beneficial for clients that come visit us. But yeah, the second major thing with the conduct code is we are going to, I recently received an invitation to the first meeting of the Conduct Advisory Board, which is the university's body for deciding on new changes to the conduct code. So that meeting is TBD, but it's coming up soon, hopefully within this week or next week, depending on like the other members of the Conduct Advisory Board and when they're available. One of the big things we're going to do is try to revamp potentially the investigative process between or within the conduct code. So like, I don't know if it was last year or maybe it was the year before. I think it was before I came to AU, but they revamped the Title IX investigative process to make it more equitable, to make it more thorough. We're going to try to potentially do something similar with the conduct process to make sure that students who are accused of serious charges are accused on the grounds of very reputable evidence, because right now things aren't as thorough as I think they should be. So that was the third thing. Number 4 is our collaboration with AUPD. You may remember last semester near the end, I told you all about how like I was working with the director of DEI on having an event with AUPD, potentially like an open house where you go over myths versus reality about the work they do and how they handle situations, etc. So now that's mostly like just cases handling that on our own. And so it's like we're now sort of in the process of figuring that out. I'm going to be in touch with Lieutenant Sifri, who's my point of contact within AUPD, about that event this week. So I'll let you know updates on that when I report next week or next Sunday. And then lastly, the thing that has been going on forever, the student rights cards. So we received word from the COGOD and School of Communications building managers that they don't want the cards up there. So that seems to be like a non-starter. I'm still going to try and convince them to see if we can put them maybe on like bulletin boards or something. They're very explicit about not wanting them in the elevators, but I think there's potentially a workaround there. If not, though, we have moved on now. I'm working with Dr. Raw, the VP of Campus Life, to target other schools. So the next one we're looking at is SPA, this building, to put up the cards. And yeah, I reviewed the cards. They're accurate. They're up to date. Everything looks good. Now it's just a matter of convincing the building managers and the deans that to actually put them up, which is harder than I thought it was going to be, but I should have expected that. And yeah, I think that's all the major updates. I'll take questions.
Questions for the director, Piper.
What is so difficult? This is not meant to attack you at all. But why is it so hard to get these cards up?
I don't know. I mean, when I talked with the building managers, or actually I did it through Dr. Roth, if she wants to have like a direct connection with the building managers, they simply told us that they didn't want them up and they didn't really give a reason. I personally think it's pretty ridiculous because they're literally like tiny cards. It's literally smaller than one of these, and it's also just as useful as one of those in terms of informing students of their rights and responsibilities. So I think it's ridiculous that they don't want them up. But they haven't given us a substantive reason, and that's why I'm going to go back and try to negotiate with the people in COGOT and SOC, because I don't see any reason for them not to put these cards up.
Bobby.
A few weeks ago, you had mentioned to me that you might have to spend more money on the students' rights cards. And now that you know they're up to date, is that still the case where you might have to spend more money on them?
Yeah, good question. So we do not need to spend more money on them. That's confirmed. The only reason I had thought that might have been the case was if the cards were inaccurate or if they were just had gross misinformation or not up to date. But Dr. Ross sent me a digital copy and it looks fine, so we won't have to be spending money on that.
Bobby.
About the digital copy, I remember last November, part of the whole thing with the students' rights cards that happened involved them being delivered to Will's apartment personally. And I know now, you got a digital copy of them. Do we have them somewhere? Physically, they exist?
Yeah,
somewhere?
I believe I don't have access to the physical ones because I'm pretty sure those are in the possession of Dr. Roth. But once we, negotiate where we're going to put them up, then obviously I'll go in and get them and put them up.
Jacob.
Thank you for being here, sir. And something that I always like to ask about that I'm always just very curious about is what sorts of trainings you continue to do for case advocates when you're getting new advocates and how you're building some kind of curriculum so that, for other case directors, so they have a real solid foundation for future trainings for advocates.
Yeah, good question again. So, so we had the really formal training early last semester, obviously, and that was just a baseline training for everyone. The second thing I'm going to do now is, since I mentioned we compiled all of that data on the various major issues that students have with various university policies, that's something that I want to probably have a staff meeting with and just explain, like, you know, when students ask you questions about this, for example, here's the answer you get. Because on things like room searches, you know, that's the one that comes to mind because it's so frequent and students are so confused about it. That's something that I would like to have every advocate know that, you know, this is how we respond when a student asks, what's the scope of a room search, for example. So that would be number one, you know, just making sure everyone's on the same page about the major issues. Number two would be potentially, I would love to work with any senators who are interested on creating legislation that would mandate that in the future, CASE has, you know, a curriculum for training before it sort of like starts up in a given semester. Because like I did that this year, but it wasn't like required for me to do that. So I would like that to be institutionalized moving forward.
Curtis?
Sure, thank you for your update. I was just wondering, so the students' rights cards are updated, finalized. Are they posted online? Where can students find it? And also, will it be updated? You know, the one in the megabytes elevator?
Yes.
Is that going to be replaced with the new ones? And
Yes.
what's the word on the rights cards in residence halls?
Okay, so for residence halls, I think that was something we had sorted out like pretty early last semester, and I don't think they wanted us to put them up there. As for the one in megabytes or MGC, that I don't think it's going to be replaced because I'm pretty sure that's the same one that the same as like the digital copy that I received. As for it being posted online, that would probably happen concurrent with whenever we start posting them around the school. But I mean, that's a good idea to have it online so students can have it accessible 24/7.
Tyler?
So I'm sure other people feel this way, but I am very interested as to why the university doesn't want these cards put up. I don't think that it makes me wonder what they're afraid of if we're like presenting the students with like, these are your rights, and then the university is saying, no, we don't want that in our building. So has anybody actually given you a reason why? And if not, can you get that information from whoever that is?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, no, to my knowledge, they haven't given us any substantive reason. I heard something like an argument about like the aesthetic, which like, come on, these buildings are not the most aesthetic to begin with. But yes, I mean, that's a ridiculous argument in itself. But yes, I'm gonna try to get those answers now that like the university budget committee is over, now that I'm done taking the ACT, I'm more free. So I'm gonna email them this week. That's the bottom line.
Bobby?
Yeah, just in terms of getting some places, I'm just gonna run a few ideas past you in terms of locations and see like, have you thought of these yourself, or like whether you have or haven't, what do you think of them? And of course, they would necessitate that we actually get some of the physical cards to put them up. But I think the easiest one we could do is putting them up in our offices in student government, just like on the door. We control those offices, so we can do that tomorrow if we wanted to. And then also, like some of the academic buildings, professors have tiny bulletin boards outside their offices that they can put stuff up on. So what do you think about like talking to professors, say, these are students' rights, would you like to put it up by your office door? And then I don't know whether this would be something for RAs or community directors, but every floor has like a bulletin board that is like different, like the RAs put up designs. So is that something, like, I know we can't put them in residence halls in general, but is that like bulletin board there specifically somewhere that could be worked on?
Yeah, so I'll take it one by one. So I love the idea about putting in student government offices. I think that's great. I don't know that we would need it in the case office because we usually review those rights anytime someone comes in, but in the other offices, I think it's a great idea, especially the Senate, because you all have office hours where students drop by regularly. As for the bulletin boards, I've thought of both of those ideas. The only thing I need clarification on, and this potentially might vary between residence hall and school, like academic school, is whether those bulletin boards are controlled by the RAs and the professors, or whether they're controlled by the building manager. So that's something I need clarification on, and again, I can get that this week. But yeah, I mean, I think those are all solid ideas. Places to put them up.
Sean?
Hi, sir, and thanks for coming. So with the 50 cases that your office has dealt with this past semester, what has been the primary issue that you've seen for each student that has come in, for your office to serve them?
Yeah, so, well, I would say primarily we've dealt with like conduct cases, like violations of the conduct code and the academic integrity code. But more broadly, regardless of what area the case is in, I think the main issue that students have is either a lack of information or misinformation, i.e. they don't understand why what they did was a violation, or they think that the procedures that were followed in the investigation of that violation were proper, or they just had like wrong information on how they were supposed to behave or what their rights and responsibilities were. And that's why I think it's so important to have an annotated conduct code, because if you read the code, or pretty much like any university policy, it's written in a lot of jargon that like a normal student, like if you just skim through that, you're gonna miss a lot of important details. So I would say it's a misinformation and lack of information.
Curtis,
How much time do we have left on the clock?
there is no, as long as Saram wants to take questions, he can take questions.
Okay, just one last question. Saram, thank you for all that you've done. I wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you.
I was wondering, could you please give the Senate and the student body an update on the university budgetary?
Yes, so I'll preface this by saying that this, I served on that committee, but like it's not a case venture. The president just like appointed me, President Panay has appointed me to be on that committee as a member, as a representative for student government at large. So we had our last meeting last Tuesday, and we voted unanimously to advance the proposal that we came up with. I can't really discuss the details of that proposal because a lot of that information is still confidential, but I do believe that we're still working on potentially doing some sort of like town hall or something where we can explain to students the highlights of our proposal before everything is like ratified.
Thank
you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Now to Vice President Ajafi's report.
Hi everyone. I'm just going to run through some general updates and catch you up to speed on what I've been up to recently. We'll go over the programming breakfast, the barbecue event, and then there's a little surprise at the end. Something that's not included in here is school class council updates, which I'll do soon. We've just kind of been trying to catch up to speed with all the other presidents of school class councils, so I don't have a full update on that yet. And then also, Mulan will be answering, or he'll be explaining kind of the VP general account, all of our spending, and I'll save questions for me during that time so that we can kind of have a comprehensive overview of that. And then also there's a directive that Bobby proposed, the VP general fund, so I can answer questions during that. And so kind of the first thing is that we had our February programming breakfast. So we've been continuing doing that, and I explained that last time I was here. It's definitely a good space for collaboration with programmers across campus. Our goal is to have students talk about what events they're up to and what they're hoping to do and finding ways that they can work together. What we've seen be a great positive part of it is, sorry, I'm kind of sick and very congested, so if my voice is crackly, it's kind of why. But what we've seen them talk positively about is how we get different clubs in the room and how they hear about, what the ballroom dancing club is doing versus like ESA versus like cultural organizations, and kind of just getting a broader sense of what other clubs are up to on campus. So that's been really positive. Another great thing that we've done is strengthening the partnership with AUCC. Colin is the new chair, and we've been working a lot together, and we'll be working together in the barbecue, and that's something that we've seen different this year than past VPs, is a really close relationship with AUCC. So I'm really happy about that. And so we've been collaborating with students, and I also think there's always room for improvement. So we're gonna be working on doing more targeted outreach and trying to get more students to come. And then barbecue round 2. So last semester I talked about the barbecue we did with AUCC, RHA, IFC, and Panhandle to support the Women's Basketball Kickoff League. And that was a great game. We got 250 students to show out, and everyone's kind of looking forward to doing that again this semester. And so we're targeting March 23rd, which is a Saturday, which is the Women's Lacrosse First Army game. And I sat on the Athletics Board Trustees Committee meeting, and when I talked about this event, they were talking a lot about how to get alumni engaged, like how to get students to come to these games. Something that I kept pointing out is we're not going to get alumni to come back if they never came as students. That's just a bigger hurdle to tackle. And so we really want to work on getting students out there. And I've been talking to the alumni board on how they can be more involved this time around. And they're really looking forward to working with us on that. And so from what I've heard, most of the co-sponsors, all the co-sponsors seem to be on board. So this is kind of just in the works right now. So yeah, that's just a few things about that. And then the next thing is kind of an exciting and unexpected. It was an unexpected email I got from DC United. I don't know if anyone's a fan in here, but I'm a huge DC United fan. And every semester, every year, they do an AU Day game. And a lot of students don't know about it. I didn't know about it until a week after last semester, so I was kind of bummed. But they're being much more targeted with their approach to this game. And so they've reached out to athletics, they reached out to alumni and FSL, and then they reached out to student government to kind of get the AU perspective, the student perspective on how to like reach different communities and to get people in the know about it. So we're kind of looking to see what that co-sponsorship would look like, or if we're just kind of helping spread the word on that. But I think it's going to be an exciting development, and something that they're working on is doing like group sections where, you know, we could say like, this is the AU student government section, and like everyone sits together and it kind of creates a bigger community feel around athletics, around AU and kind of your own group and everything. So I don't know if that's something you guys are interested in, but we're going to work on kind of building that community feel around that. So those are kind of my general updates. Now, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions for the Vice President? Jacob?
Can you just elaborate, so like, what is the, like, what would an AU day, like, what is
Yeah.
that for DCU?
So different, I should have elaborated on that. Different sports teams will sometimes reach out to colleges and be like, come and like, we're gonna do like a big like college day at our game. And so like, we're gonna give you a special price on tickets, and like, we're gonna have a section for you. And it's kind of just gonna be your day at the ballpark or at the field. And so they said that if we get around 150 tickets plus, we could have a singing group come and sing the national anthem, and then there's different perks that are involved in that. So I'm gonna kind of explore what it's gonna be like being a co-sponsor, and if we can get a lot of people out there, if we can get students to do these things. But it's just a good day for like, I feel like it's one of those events that once that happens, you kind of look forward to it every semester, going to a game with all your friends and having everyone there. It's pretty exciting. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, it sounds like a great idea, but please keep us updated.
Piper?
For the game, would there be like would people just get there on their own? Would there be transportation provided? Like, how's that work?
So they unfortunately won't be like funding like coach buses or anything, but like it's really metro accessible. And then additionally, something I recommended was doing like a Lyft or Uber promo code kind of thing. Like 25% off. That would be like ideal for students who might want to ride their cars.
Curtis?
I was just wondering, have you heard back from other sports organizations like the Wizards or Nationals? I know the Nationals has an American University Day in the summer, but the Wizards or
So-
Cavs?
Yeah, so they haven't emailed me. I wish that they would.
There, Chris.
I didn't even know the Nationals did an AU Day thing either. I think that's like the big issue is that most of us don't know these things happen. So like getting students in the know about these things is kind of one of my goals. And like the DC United reaching out to me is like super random, but I think it like adds on to this mission of building community around different things. And especially like AU sports community is like not tapped into enough and like could be supported more. And I think that getting people drawn into athletics in some kind of way is positive. So, but no, they haven't reached out to me. I really wish they would.
Other questions? Curtis?
Would you be willing to reach out to them?
Yeah, so I would like definitely, I would be down to email Nat Spark and be like, hi, can we help? But the only issue is if it's in the summer, then like my term's over, but, and it won't be around, it won't be here. But I'd be happy to see how we can participate more in that. And I'll definitely explore that. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Seeing no other questions, thank you. All right, moving to Acting Comptroller Burgess.
All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. So I'm basically just going to be presenting on what the comptroller cabinet, what I have been doing since I've taken on the role since this Wednesday. So this is just the agenda I'm going to go by. I'm going to introduce myself since it's kind of another unfamiliar face that you guys have seen in this role. Then I'll go over the budget by the numbers and then the budget at a glance. So basically what the budget was passed last year by the 13th Undergraduate Senate, as well as the Special Committee on Finance that was then chaired by Saram. Then I'll talk about co-sponsorships. That money specifically has come out of SG General and the travel subsidy accounts. Then I'll talk about Kenny Political Union Sub, WI, and then Founders Day, what funds that they've done from the different events that they've put on. Moving forward, I'll basically just be talking about the money that's left over in all the different accounts. You guys can kind of just get an idea of what money we're going into this spring semester with. And then future goals are just basically goals that I have for myself since I'll be serving in this role until February 20th. And then just acknowledgement. Okay, so speaking of myself, I was a former senator last year for the class of 2021. And then I served also as an associate comptroller, and then now I'm acting comptroller for until February 20th. And then outside of student government, I'm kind of an AU ambassador, AU college dems, and kind of like wear many hats in different organizations on campus. Okay, so these three numbers here, I just want you guys to just keep focused and keep track of these things. $435,000 is basically how much SG has in all of the accounts, including the programming boards, including SG General Travel Subsidy, all of that is included in there. The $130,000 is $125,000 that was for Founders Day itself, and then $5,000 that's for the week that occurs during Founders. And then $70,000 is just the stipends, but I won't be talking about the last number because the number that's for stipends has already been allocated and has been approved from last year's Senate. Okay, so looking at the budget at a glance, I'm not sure if you guys have been able to look at last year's budget, and I know there was quite a bit of questions when Valentina had gave her State of the Union speech about, exactly how much this money is, because she gave percentages of it. So I just wanted to add into those percentages, but actually give a value number to what it exactly is. So these are all the accounts that basically wasn't passed by last year's 13th Undergraduate Senate, as well as the Special Committee on Finance. So just take a minute to look at that. Some of you guys have probably already looked at it as well. Okay, so co-sponsorship. So within SG General, this is what has occurred from last semester and then also for this semester. So we started off with $5,000 and then added up with all of those partnerships that we've done. That's the total amount of money that we've actually spent. And then that's the remaining balance that's within SG General as of right now. That's the remaining amount of money. And then for travel subsidy, that is also the remaining amount of money as well, which is $2,000. So for SG General, there is a club that has asked me for money since I took over, that I'm looking to fund their request starting tomorrow when Emily gets back into the office. And then there is also another club that is requesting money for travel subsidy that I'm also looking to fund their request as well. So I just kind of want to highlight these things because I know what's on the SG website under the budget transparency page doesn't necessarily give it a good outlook and a good look. It might be a little bit outdated. Some numbers might be a little bit wrong. So these are numbers that yesterday I worked on this presentation all day to like line by line look at these numbers and make sure that everything was how it's supposed to be. And then also when I had spoke with the 13th Undergraduate Senate, some senators that were there, one thing I said about co-sponsorship is that I have this mentality that partnerships become friendships. So the more that we have partnerships with clubs and organizations on campus, the more that we get out to them and saying that student government will help and support them, the more those will become friendships. So for example, Caribbean Circle, student government almost every year tends to fund their request for their back to school welcome that they do in the fall semester. And that started off with a partnership that has become friendship that every year we will fund their request, however much it might be. So with these new organizations, especially AASU and Shabbat AU, those are new partnerships that are being created with student government, and I'm hoping to continue those on as friendships. Okay, so County Political Union, just highlighting some of the events that they've done so far for this semester. So I was able to get in contact with Yas, who's the director, and then also their finance director. And these were the numbers that they had gave me of every single event that they've done, as well as miscellaneous, and then the amount of expenses, adding up all those events, and then the current balances in their account. Just to be clear, these numbers are not speaker fees. These numbers are basically what it takes to put on the production of these events. So production costs, security, speaker fees, catering, all that is those numbers that are there. I just want to make that like super, super clear, because some people might get it confused that these are speaker fees. They are not speaker fees. So just giving you guys a moment to look at those numbers so you can see all the different events that they put on. And then this is also their remaining balance number as of today. Student Union Board, highlighting also some of the events that they've done so far. Okay, same thing with sub is similar to how KPU is set up, that these are the amount of money that they spent on all the different events. So it started off with $191,000 that was passed by last year's Senate. And this is the amount of money total that they spent on all of those events, and then the current balance that they have in their account as well. And again, for these are just basically production costs, catering, like everything is a lump sum of what it takes on to put that event to happen at AU. And then Women's Initiative, some events that they've done so far. And these are 5 events that they've done so far. These are basically the prices that they've had for every single one of their events. I was able to actually get in contact with Marie yesterday, and she was able to get her finance director to send me this information line by line for the event, because on the programming spreadsheet that has all the programmers, they put their input into there. It wasn't necessarily updated for Women's Initiative, so I had to kind of get in contact with them and let them know, like, hey, I need to know, specifically each event, how much you spent on it. And that's including food, catering, production costs, everything. And then total expenses is around $6,000. And then that's right now what they have in their budget to use for the spring semester. And then for Founders Week specifically, I got in contact with Emma. She wanted me to let the senators know that because Founders Day and Founders Week has not yet occurred, a lot of the production costs and just the cost to put on the event is still right now up in the air, because stuff is still being bought, stuff is still being pending. So a lot of transactions, she didn't want me to give you guys false numbers or any information that can be confidential, because not every single senator has signed an NDA. But she didn't want me to let you guys know that the biggest line items from their budget will be the venue donation, support fees, catering, transportation, and production. And then they've also co-sponsored with RHA, GLC, Student Media Board, and AUCC. So she just wanted me to let you know that we won't know for sure the exact cost of different things until after the event has taken place. Now moving forward, this is basically the amount of money that is within all the different accounts as of right now. SG General has $3,000, Capital Maintenance still has $5,000, nothing was taken out of that account. Grateful for Bobby for helping me when I first got into the role on Wednesday to figure out if actual money was spent out of it, because it was a little bit confusing on the website, and it did say that money was spent out of it. Travel subsidy is $2,000, so similar to SG General and travel subsidy, there are both one club each that are requesting money from both of those accounts that I'm looking to possibly fund tomorrow when I speak with Ebony when she's in the office. VP fund is $221, and back to what Leela had said during her presentation, there was a, and I can let you guys know right now, there was an unknown transaction that was posted on June 28th of about $500 for Safeway. So right now I'm working with Leela, I had contacted her about it. we're working with Ebony to figure out if that transaction should have been from her VP fund when she took over as vice president, or if that number should have been posted when Solomon was vice president last year. So that number, I'll get it, double check and make sure that it's supposed to be that amount that's up there and that actually was supposed to be posted onto it. But in the event you guys pass the legislation for today, that number will of course increase with the $2,000 that Leela had requested. KPU supplements initiative, those are the amount of money that they have currently in their accounts. Dopar is $1,700. That mainly came from $300 that was transferred to Founders Day from Alex's account. And then he also had spent some of his own personal money for the updating of the website and everything like that. So that's why I wasn't included into Dopar, because it was over the summer when those transactions were taking place. And then also for the updating of the website, it didn't come out of Dopar because it was a summer transaction. So anytime there's a summer transaction, it comes out of their account. So the $2,300 that was used for SG materials for Eagle Summit, all of that came out of restricted account because they needed the money for it. So it didn't come, it would have came out of the Dopar account, but because it doesn't start until actually here on campus in August, it came out of restricted. And in case, spoke with Sorum yesterday, they have not spent any money, so that still is in there. And Community Service Coalition as well has not spent any money. And then of course with Founders Day and Founders Week, $130,000, we won't know exactly that remaining, won't be a remaining balance because Founders Day will be over. Well, I won't know exactly how much the different costs are until after the event takes place. And I can also come back to Senate and let you guys know like exactly everything that they spent for the event. So future goals, this is literally just pulled out of the judicial opinion, Brian, who's the chair of it. And some of these goals I'm looking to accomplish in my time up till February 20th. So reporting back bi-weekly to the Undergraduate Senate. I'm doing that right now, and I'll also be here next week as well to report to you guys on the updated information about the VP fund and any other account information. And any questions you guys might have that I might not be able to answer today, I'll be here next week as well to give answers to them. Comptroller or cabinet member attend every Undergraduate Senate meeting. So now as acting comptroller, I'm kind of attending that right now. Update the budget transparency page and then publish monthly reports of fiscal activities. So one thing that I'm hoping to accomplish at the end of this week is to have, instead of a screenshot of the budget for that specific month that just goes into the SG website. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with how AUCC has a Google spreadsheet of like anybody can access like the different clubs that's on campus. So I'm looking to create something that's similar for SG where that link will just be posted on the website and any AU student can view that and have access to it. And that will always be updated in like live time. And it'll always say like last updated by this date, this time. So students are available and aware of that. I know when I had told Bobby about that idea, he did say that that was one of the recommendations that the Special Committee on Finance had for the comptroller. Publish specific spending for student government accounts, and then also coordinating with the Special Committee on Finance. So of course, I've been working with Bobby since I've taken over the role on Wednesday, but I'll also be helping if you guys need any advice during the back allocation meetings. And then also helping with like creating the budget for next year. I served on the Special Committee on Finance with Saram as his vice chairman. So I'm aware of, kind of like how all those negotiations take place and like making sure that SG gets a good amount of money that they actually need to function as an organization, but then also not taking away money that might be vital to Student Media Board and AUCC. And then acknowledgements, I just wanted to say, although they're not here, our SA advisors, so Ebony, Maya, and Ayana for basically helping me to get adjusted to this role when I took over on Wednesday. I had a meeting with every single one of them individually, and they basically told me, what they need me to do and how to do the job. And if I had any questions for the next 2 weeks, I'll be in this position. To executive board, Leela, Valentina, and Alex, they've all basically make me very welcomed into the group. And then I'll also be having my first temporary e-board meeting with them at 4 o'clock today. And then to the leadership board, thank you, Brian, for entrusting me to do this job and do it well for the next 2 weeks that I'll be having it. And then also to the 14th Undergraduate Senate, thank you guys for holding executives accountable. Is your job to. I remember serving as a senator. It's your job to hold students accountable, especially if they're getting paid by student money and also using student money to hold it back. So it's your job to hold us accountable and make sure we're doing our job. So thank you guys for that. And with that, any questions?
Questions for Mulan? Curtis?
Well, thank you for your very thorough presentation. I was just wondering, so at the pace that several organizations are going, they're not going to be spending the whole amount that was allocated to them. What happens after the school year is over? What happens to that money?
So a lot of that money will go over into like the restricted kind of rollover money. So it'll still be in their account, but it'll just roll over to the next school year. But I know one thing that Maya has let me know is that she's trying to encourage the programmers to spend their budget so that we don't continue to have such a large amount of money that just goes into the SG restricted account, and then every time they have to come back to Senate and ask, like, hey, let's move money from restricted into whatever fund it is.
Bobby?
Yeah, I would just point out really quickly to that although like first semester spending isn't half of the spending, so that would imply that, like you said, Curtis, that they're not on pace to spend it all. I would say that most of them actually are, because a lot of the biggest events are in the spring: Founder's Day, Walk of the Year, Take Back the Night, Breaking Ground Monologues. So I think it'll all work out. And I don't have a question. I would just like to point out that Milana's basically been living like in the student activities office. So good job, all that work.
Is that a question?
Would you agree that you would live in those?
Yeah.
Yes, I will agree.
Vice President Jaffe,
I can also answer Curtis's question.
do you have a question for
No, I have a
Burgess?
question.
Do you have a question for Mulan?
Don't you think also AmFest subs, like biggest production at the end of the year, will cost a big portion of their budget?
Yes, I will agree.
See, we can do that. See.
For
You know how to do
example,
it.
To add on to Leila's question, and I'll end it with a statement. Like KP, for example, like, you know, they still have money there, but Walk of the Year still hasn't occurred. For Sub, we still have AmFest. They still have other concerts and events that they're planning. And then Women's Initiative still has a wide variety of events that they're planning, especially the Breaking Monologues that's about to be occurring. So they will be using most of their money, if not all.
Other questions? Curtis?
So Mulan, do you expect the organizations to spend 90 to 100% of their money, or will, by the end of the school year, or will the money continue to roll over? Just because, like, I'm just wondering on behalf of people who have come to me, is that they're paying $85 a semester for their student activity fee, and if there's leftover money, that's money that's essentially gone if they're graduating from the school or separating from AU. So I was wondering, what's your stance on organizations spending close to 100% of their allocated budget?
I think every organization, every programmer should spend dollar for dollar because it is student money. I think there shouldn't be any type of leftover money that's coming, you know, into the new school year. We shouldn't have to always be taking money out of restricted just to move it into different funds. So one thing, at least in my role for the next 2 weeks, is I'm going to encourage the programmers, like, this is kind of like where I see it going forward. Like, I think you should be spending dollar for dollar student money, especially if you're getting paid by student money. You should be spending student money, at least wisely, you should be spending it. And I think also those are the same sentiments that Leila has as well as Vice President.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving to Judicial Board Chair Fu.
Hello, everyone. This is the first of 2 times I'll be getting up before you. But I am mandated in the bylaws and the judicial register to get up here. Every time J Board does something, we have to read it before you. This is a little long. It's 3 pages, single spaced. So I apologize in advance, but I'm gonna just read this word for you. So Judicial Opinion 14.002, on February 1st, 2019, Senator Donnie Adams submitted an inquiry regarding the performance of Comptroller Gladden in 9 different areas. A hearing took place on February 4th, 2019, where evidence was submitted, witnesses heard, and testimony delivered. After deliberation, the Judicial Board has come to a unanimous decision regarding the charges brought against Comptroller Gladden. On the question of whether the Comptroller violated the rules of debate and decorum by not reporting bi-weekly to the Undergraduate Senate, we find Comptroller Gladden in violation. The board believes that the rules of debate and decorum in Article 7.I.2 are very clear in mandating a bi-weekly report from the executives, and we agree with the interpretation of the complaint that a report from a member of the executive's cabinet does not satisfy this requirement. On the question of whether the Comptroller violated the rules of debate and decorum by not having herself or a cabinet member attend every Undergraduate Senate meeting, we find Comptroller Gladden in violation. The rules of debate and decorum in the same section as above also mandates that either the executive or a member of their cabinet be available at every Senate meeting. There simply was not enough evidence to show that there was a member of the Comptroller's cabinet or the Comptroller herself had attended every meeting. On the question of whether the Comptroller violated the bylaws by neglecting to update the budget transparency page of the student government website, we find Comptroller Gladden in violation. The bylaws in Article 3.1.BII are clear in both requirement of duty and time frame in explaining what is to be done and how often. The complaint was able to show that there has been a significant amount of time that the website had not been updated. While the Comptroller was able to update the website in the interim of the inquiry being submitted and the hearing, this still doesn't excuse the fact that the website had gone for so long without the necessary updates. On the question of whether the Comptroller violated the bylaws by neglecting to publish monthly reports of the physical activities of student government, we find Comptroller Gladden in violation. In the bylaws in Article 3.1.b, we believe to be sufficiently clear in the mandate of a monthly fiscal report of the Comptroller, as well as the reports to be made public. There simply was no record anywhere of such reports, nor were any records of the reports submitted in the evidence. While there was a compelling argument for the fact that the Comptroller would not necessarily receive financial information from the relevant parties to publish in time to publish a report, the board still cannot ignore the mandate of the governing documents. On the question of whether the Comptroller violated the bylaws by failing to include spending of certain student government accounts on the budget transparency website, we find Comptroller Gladden in violation. The bylaws in Article 3.1.BII explicitly requires that the budget transparency of the website include itemized individual expenses, not just total sums of money spent by each department. The evidence of the website submitted does show that this requirement was fulfilled in previous months, but not with the most recent update. On the question of whether the Comptroller violated the bylaws by declining to represent student government on certain university committees, we find Comptroller Gladden not in violation. The board believes the bylaws seem to contradict itself in this regard. On one hand, the bylaws in Article 3.1.I require that the Comptroller represent the student government to the university when fiduciary affairs are involved. On the other hand, the bylaws in Article I.1.III also gives the authority to the president to appoint students to, quote, any and all bodies of which the student government as a whole is represented, end quote. This authority was properly exercised in the case of the University Budget Committee, with the representative of student government being present via the appointment of the president. I think that was surrounded, right? Yeah, okay. Therefore, we cannot fault the Comptroller for this contradictory situation. On the question of whether the Comptroller violated the bylaws by failing to submit a draft of the ethical and judicial standards to the undergraduate senate, we find Comptroller Gladden not in violation. There is simply no requirement for the Comptroller to submit a draft of the ethical and judicial standards to the undergraduate senate for approval. While the complainant admitted that the question was supposed to reference the Employee Policy and Procedures Manual, which is required to be submitted to the undergraduate senate for approval by the Comptroller, the original question did not reference this, and therefore the board cannot hold the Comptroller in violation of a requirement that is not held in it. On the question of whether the Comptroller violated the bylaws by failing to keep organized records of student government spending, we find Comptroller Gladden not in violation. There simply was not enough evidence to suggest that the Comptroller had been grossly negligent in this area. The bylaws also grant broad and wide authority to the Comptroller to maintain financial records in any way she sees fit. Therefore, the board cannot assess the execution of her duties when there is no specific requirement in the governing documents. On the question of whether the Comptroller violated the bylaws by failing to submit performance evaluations every month and reporting these to the Undergraduate Senate Finance Committee, we find Comptroller Gladden in violation. It is a clear requirement of the Office of the Comptroller to conduct performance evaluations and then deliver those evaluations to the Special Committee on Finance. There was no record of these performance evaluations having ever been made or delivered to the Finance Committee. While there was a legitimate argument that this requirement has historically never been done by the Comptrollers, the board cannot allow past practices of the office to supersede the governing document's clear mandates. Lest we set a dangerous precedent where officers may simply change the rules of their office and claim it to be precedent even if it violates the governing documents. In total, Comptroller Gladden was found to be in violation of 6 requirements of her office. The sanctions ordered against Comptroller Gladden are as follows. Comptroller Gladden shall be suspended from her duties for a period of 14 days beginning on February 6, 2019 at 12 p.m. The suspension will end at February 20th, 2019 at 12 p.m. In accordance with the bylaws, Articles 8, Section 4, subsection I, Comptroller Gladden's pay shall be modified in a manner amenable to student activities. The immediate successor of Comptroller Gladden, as determined in the structure of her cabinet, shall assume the duties of the Office of Comptroller for the period of the suspension. During the period of suspension, Comptroller Gladden may not execute any of the duties of her office, including but not limited to holding office hours, authorizing any financial obligation of the student government, or be involved in the adjudication of violations of the ethical and judicial standards. Comptroller Biden's suspension shall end February 20th, 2019 at 12 p.m., at which point she will enter a period of probation. While probation is not listed as a sanction under the judicial register, the register does permit the board to authorize any sanction they deem fit, so long as it does not permanently remove the member in Article 3, Section 4, subsection VII. During this period of probation, which will last for 30 days until March 22nd, 2019 at 12 p.m., Comptroller Biden may once again assume the duties of her office and may collect pay for the time served outside of the period of suspension. As part of the probation, Comptroller Biden must do the following: send evidence to the chair of the judicial board that she is rectifying the violations she was found responsible for, including updating the website properly and in the correct time frame, the publication of the monthly fiscal report, which must be submitted to the board before March 1st, 2019, that the required date for the publication is mandated in the bylaws, Article 3, Section 1, subsection B, evidence of her biweekly reports to the Senate, evidence of her attendance or a member of her cabinet's attendance at every Senate meeting during the period of probation, and the submission of performance evaluations conducted during the period of probation. In this area, it is also required that the comptroller submit these evaluations to the chair of the Special Committee on Finance. It's the last paragraph. Should the comptroller provide all the relevant evidence required under this opinion in the time required, then her period of probation shall end on March 22nd, 2019 at 12 p.m. And the matter of this case shall be considered closed. Should the comptroller fail to provide the necessary documentation and evidence to the judicial board in the fashions outlined in the opinion, then the comptroller's probation shall still end on March 22nd, 2019. But the judicial board shall reconvene at that time to consider further sanctions in terms of the violation probation. It is so ordered on this day, on this 5th day of February 2019, signed Brian Cody, Chair of the Judicial Board. That's it. That's all my report is. I can take one.
Questions?
Question for Trevor.
Yes.
Is it true that people can save their questions for when Brian comes up next time to be reconfirmed?
If they desire. If they desire, yeah. Questions? Seeing none, thank you. Okay, a few things. One, as you'll see in new business today, we're going through a reconfirmation process for Judicial Board Chair Fu. For those that are unaware, as of last year, Judicial Board members are now required to go through basically a reconfirmation process every semester to make sure that they're at least still active or aware of their duties, because in previous years we've had trouble either one, contacting people in general, and two, being aware of who serves in that position and so forth. So it's not as formal as a confirmation process, but it's just like a check-in basically to make sure that the Senate still feels that the position is being adequately pursued and filled. In terms of the election of the chair, as you know, Senator Jackson resigned, so we will be having election on that. If for those that were not here, it's going to be a secret ballot, and we'll do the whole nomination, discussion, things like that, if so be it. So that's what's going on, and then there's a couple other pieces of legislation. In terms of other things I'm doing, I'm trying to finalize the legislative agenda. Thank you to those that have given me the details that I need. I'm still working on fixing or finishing some of the final details, like our final room for the rest of the semester, and some different goals from a few of the committees, just to finalize everything, put it in wording, and then publish it, give it to Dr. All, things like that. For those that were not with us last week for our Senate retreat, I believe that those that were there can agree that we had a good time, but also a productive time in terms of getting to know one another, and also meeting with Jessica Waters, Dr. Volkman of the Counseling Center, and Jeff Brown, Dean of Students. I think there were some really great conversations there about things that could be improved, what they're doing, making those partnerships. So that is something, and hopefully that has spurred some advocacy ideas for the rest of the semester. For those that were there, feel free to reach out to senators that were there, senators that were at the retreat. Feel free to bring in other senators and some of your advocacy ideas, because it doesn't have to be a solo mission. It can be a group effort. I highly encourage it. And I have finalized an executive clerk. So we got that taken care of. She's not here today because she's in a one credit class this weekend. But she will be with us next week, so you'll meet her then. And I have one communications director. I'm looking to hire a second one, so hopefully we'll ramp up the social media presence and the communications that Senate has starting this upcoming week. And I'm still looking for a historian to help keeping all the legislation in order, and then a legislative and advocacy director who will assist me in helping you all with your advocacy and your work and anything that you need from us. I think I'm working with President Fernandez and Jacob and Bobby and Sean on a possible commission to review and revamp the governing documents, because based on some of the discussions and dialogue that have arisen over the last week, there's some significant need for clarification and overhaul, especially in the bylaws, but the governing documents in general. So if you're interested in working on that, reach out to me and we'll get that established. We'll make it a joint effort between the executives and the legislative branch for both future, hopefully to get it done before the new executive board takes office. That way they know exactly like what they're getting themselves into and what their role requires and things like that. Yeah, as always, make sure that you reach out to me if you need any assistance. If you're reaching out to people in the administration, make sure that you are CCing at least Dr. Aw in those conversations, but I also encourage you to CC me and Ayana just to make sure that we're aware of what you're doing. And if you need some assistance like following up with people, then that's where I can come and help, or Ayana or Dr. Aw can all help with that. And keep up the office hours. Everyone's doing pretty well on that. Remember that you don't have to be in the office necessarily to do your office hours. Like you can do the roaming office hours, just have to make me aware of that and make sure you're still signing the binder. And then also the office, like you can use your office hours for just about anything Senate related. So like if you're meeting with people, if you want to do research on your legislation, anything like that. And then you all, I believe I sent out the presentation that I gave at the retreat last week. It gives you a good overview of the process in drafting legislation. If you have questions about that, feel free to let me know. And I think that's it on my end. Are there questions for me moving forward? Great. Okay. Moving to new business, to the reconfirmation process for Judicial Board Chair Fu. The floor is now yours.
Hello again, everyone. So like Trevor said earlier, J board members have to come before Senate every semester to be recertified. So this is my turn. The other J board members know they have to come, and it's on their agendas, and they said they will be doing that soon. In terms of what I've done so far, I'm still relatively new in this job. I was only confirmed your last meeting of the fall semester. But I'm getting used to the job now. I have completed the requirement for reporting to Senate every decision that I've made. I've only made 3, the dismissal of a charge, the appointment of a vice chair, and the opinion in Adams v. Biden. Other than that, I really haven't done much, mainly because J-Board is kind of not a proactive, but it's a reactive kind of thing. Like we have to wait for inquiries to come in before we do stuff. So I simply haven't been doing much because I haven't gotten inquiries. I'm working on editing the judicial register, which I'm required to submit between the end of the spring election and the last meeting of the undergraduate senate of the spring semester. So those will be coming to y'all when the spring elections are over. But that's a while away. Other than that, happy to take your questions about anything.
Questions for the chair? Bobby.
I asked about your logic behind this comptroller decision, and not in order to gauge whether I agree with you, because that's not my job. That would be appropriate, but just to establish your understanding of the governing documents and like your role. So You read all the logic behind like why each individual question you found the way that you did, so I'm not gonna have us go through that again. But can you explain your logic behind the decision, like based on these places where we found violations, this is the sanction? Because just number one, like I said, to establish your understanding of your role, and second, because I have heard criticism of the decision from student government members saying like, if the goal is to have these duties of the comptroller fulfilled, it is counterproductive to immediately suspend the comptroller. So yeah, just what is your thinking?
So, yeah, like you said, I explained and I made the citations in the beginning here. In terms of the biggest argument was the clarity problem of the governing documents. Was this requirement clear or not? And a couple of them, like we said, we dismissed them because they weren't clear. But the big reason for the decisions was, yes, this was clear. And in terms of the sanctioned order, we did, the reasoning for the whole counter to it to suspend, the suspension was in line with the precedent that comptrollers be suspended for not doing this job. And it's not just comptrollers, but for executives who fail to do their jobs. You know, it was found in two areas in Koshkin v. Machovic, I think it was the name. Found that she was suspended as well. She wasn't suspended for a definite period of time. She was suspended until her position until the things had been done. But we thought a determined suspension was appropriate. And then the period of probation was the chance to show JBoard that the job was being done. To simply suspend and not have the period of probation, I would agree, would be counterintuitive. But we believe that the suspension was appropriate and that the probation was that period of, okay, this is your chance to show us that you're doing the job correctly.
Curtis.
Brian, what's your thoughts and I guess beliefs about precedent? Precedent set by previous, I guess, position holders and also on the status of the bylaws and how we treat them as a government body. What's your opinion on precedent?
So for us, precedent only counts as a governing document if it's a parliamentary problem. So the governing documents listed in the Constitution say that it's like the fourth one in order is that past parliamentary decisions. So precedents set by for opinions in inquiries, things that are outside of parliamentary inquiries aren't considered governing documents, unlike, you know, Supreme Court kind of things considered constitutional law if it's decided. But I believe in administrative precedent. I don't believe in interpretive precedent. I think that different JBoards can interpret the bylaws in different ways. So just because this JBoard said that this is incorrect, doesn't mean this board can't say, well, wait a minute, let's review it ourselves. You know, let's take an active role in looking at it, not just deferring to the past decision. But I do believe in administrative precedent. I do think that the way JBoard does things, it's not set in stone. Like we can change things that within the purview of the governing documents, but the way we do things, I think, is well structured if you look at the precedent.
Bobby.
So we've got the spring elections coming up, and something happened. There were two inquiries about it last year during the elections and one about it the year before, about a provision in the elections policy book that says candidates can't use official powers to help their campaign. And all of these three inquiries over the past 2 years have had to do with like people's official positions, but not inside student government, like whether you're an RA or a member of Explore DC or president of the Residence Hall Association. And JBoard has had different ideas about that in all those cases. So I'm wondering, what do you think just in general about official positions outside of student government and their interactions with student government campaigns?
I'm not gonna obviously say, well, I ruled 100% this way or that way on something without having details. But the election policy book was changed, was edited to say that it's something around like the powers given to you in a leadership position that others don't have access to necessarily. That's not widely accessible to. So I think that applies generally to, because it doesn't say student government official powers. I think that does extend to any leadership position you're given that gives you some kind of advantage over the student body if it's within the campus purview. If it's like, I have a job and they're letting me use their printers, I don't know about that. If it's, I'm the president of such and such organization, okay, that's up for a little more debate. But again, I'm not gonna say whether or not for sure I'm gonna lean this way or that way, just because I need to know more details or something like that.
Jacob?
I want to start off by saying thank you for being here. I know, obviously, to come on a weekend is, to give us your time is valuable, so thank you. I'd like to ask you two questions as it pertains to the hearing that was just carried out. I asked you this during the committee meeting, but I'm hoping, in putting it to the full Senate, you can maybe either expand or just repeat what your answer was. What were some things that you learned about conducting that hearing that you'd either like to do differently? And if you can also maybe elaborate, I know not fully on the sort of adjudication process separately between the members, but some things that you also feel like were important that going forward as the chair, you'll try to keep in mind and as you adjudicate things also as you run things.
So in terms of the process of the hearing, there were some questions about, can I question witnesses? Can I question this person? Can this person speak now? I think we need to do a better job of enforcing the speaking rights rules. Only certain people are given speaking rights during J-Board hearings, and it's pretty clear in the governing documents that it's people, the two students who can represent the people with the inquiries, J-Board members, parliamentarian, inspector has speaking rights, and other than that, J-Board will need to vote fully on granting speaking rights to somebody, and that wasn't necessarily done. So I'd like to work on enforcing that better because it's not a free-for-all. J-Board hearings aren't like, all right, anyone can speak anytime they want because you lose the flow of order at that point. In terms of things I learned, I looked back at the precedent of J-Board doing things and I kind of applied that to now, so I'm still, the learning curve is still there for how to continue things, make them better. You know, I'm always open to suggestions and, you know, ideas about this could be better, this didn't go well. So I'm always open to feedback like that, but I thought it went pretty smoothly.
Other questions? Curtis?
Brian, thank you for coming. I was just wondering, is your, like, what is your opinion on a 3-member J board currently? Do you feel that we should have more members?
I prefer the full J board. I prefer to have 5 people. Simply because 3 people requires a unanimous decision, and 3 or less requires J board to be unanimous. And I think that puts us in a sticky spot when we can't be unanimous, and then we have to just dismiss things even if they have merit. So I would like a 5-member J board, but that's obviously up to Senate, Trevor, and Val to do that. I don't have any role in that. I also like a parliamentarian. Working on that. I forgot to mention that. I'm working with Val to get a parliamentarian.
Other questions?
And an inspector. Working on that too.
Seeing none. Thank you. If you wouldn't mind leaving the room. Discussion on the chair. Jacob?
I was very impressed with how the hearing was carried out. It was, very well attended, and I think there was the potential for sometimes for there to be moments that went off the rails, but I thought Brian did a great job as chair. I think he's demonstrated that he knows what he's doing. I think that he sufficiently does the best possible work he can always do, and if there's not really any kind of argument, I'd like to move that we just accept his renomination with unanimous consent.
Sorry.
Here a second. Is there any objection to reconfirming Brian? Hearing no objection, he is reconfirmed for the semester. Motion?
Yeah, Raphael has asked me to move up the Confederate flag resolution because he has something to say on it and he has to leave, so I moved to put it next.
Okay, is there a second? Discussion on moving the resolution up 1? Seeing none, all those in favor say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed say nay. And the chair, the ayes have it, and we will move to resolution 001. All right, well,
That's not the right one. It's the meal plan.
oh man. Okay, well, does the sponsor,
Yeah, I'll talk.
want, yeah, talk about it?
Yeah, so a few things. First of all, since I submitted it, Jacob here has asked to be a sponsor. So after you do your things here, that's another thing to add to your queue of things to do. But yeah, so this is the first resolution that we've considered in this term, and I've run into a few questions about what resolutions mean for new members. So I'll just provide that in case anyone else has those questions as well. A resolution is an official statement like by the Undergraduate Senate as a body of this is what we have to say on this matter. They don't have any effect on any like members of student government. Other kinds of legislation, like a directive we're doing later today or a bill, can have a member of student government add to their job, you need to do this. But a resolution is just saying, like, this is our official stance on something. So that's the first thing. Second, about the subject matter of this resolution. It was inspired by the incident that happened where there was this guy at TDR wearing a hoodie that was basically like a Confederate flag all over his body. I'm sure everybody has like familiarity with the issue, so I won't go into too much detail on it. But I'll provide you with the background in my position on a few points of debate that revolve around this resolution in particular and resolutions of this kind in general. So first, whenever these sorts of things happen, there's a question of whether the Undergraduate Senate does something like this, condemn the incident that happened. And when I first joined student government a few semesters ago, the feeling was that the Senate should not pass resolutions like this because they don't really do anything concrete. Yeah, that was the prevailing thought when I first joined student government. And then later in the 13th Senate, we had a few incidents where people from communities that were affected by these incidents, people from the Latinx community, Jewish students, et cetera, would come up to us and say, this happened and we didn't see you guys say anything about it. So why were you silent? So that is like the support of both sides of that question. And obviously in submitting this resolution, I fall on the side that says, if students are concerned about this and would like student government to say something about it, then we should say something about it. Now, at the same time, we also need to be in coordination with the communities that are affected and any organized presence that they have. So about a week ago, when I wrote this resolution, I reached out and presented the idea and asked for feedback from the Black Student Union, the AU chapter of the NAACP, the African Student Organization, as well as LASSO, the Latin American Student Association, and the Jewish Student Association. None of them have gotten back to me, unfortunately. So that's that. That's my feedback, or lack thereof, from the community. Then there's the issue of free speech. I know Raphael might talk about this, so I won't take his comments away from him. I'll let him make those comments. But from my perspective, I'm someone who does believe in the value of free speech on campus and diverse points of view. I'm a founding member of a campus publication whose mission in part is to present as many different points of view as possible. So that is something that I value. But on this issue, AU isn't legally bound to protect anyone's free speech. I think it should, that it's valuable for students to hear things that contradict their opinion. But this displays of the Confederate flag, I don't think qualify under that sort of thing because they don't prevent anything of value to the community. Like the Confederate flag, there are people who say it has whatever symbolism, but really I think it's unambiguous that it's only about hate and violence, and that's not something that I think is valuable for us to consider as students. So yeah, that's all my points. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. I can clarify anything. And then after that, I think Raphael has some things to say.
Questions for the sponsor? Curtis.
Have you talked to anyone in public safety or the Office of Campus Life about, because in the resolution, it states that they should have kicked the guy out of TDR. What was the school's or whoever is in OCL or the Department of Public Safety, what was their stance on the issue?
So Dr. Ah released 2 memos about this to the student body where she explained her and therefore OCL's position on this matter. And they explained why, under their view, like they did not need to remove this person. Now I think they're a better like judge when it really comes down to it of like what their policies are. So I won't pretend to be a better authority than them on that. But I can say, first of all, like I imagine in other scenarios that they would remove someone for wearing something that is blatantly hateful or threatening. Like the example I talk about in this bill is if they were dressed up in a Nazi uniform or if they were in a KKK outfit. I do think that that person would be asked to leave TDR. So I do think that, and that's just my intuition. I might be wrong on that. But if that is the case, I think the same principle can be applied to someone who has been draped in the Confederate flag. And then I feel like I was going to say something else. Did you have another question?
Have you met with them?
I have not.
Questions? Seeing none, we'll move to discussion. Discussion on the resolution. Raphael.
Hi, for those who don't know me, because I see some new faces. I'm Raphael, I'm the Director of Diversity and Inclusion for Student Government and the President's Cabinet. I'm the co-chair of the Student Advisory Committee to the President's Council on Diversity and Inclusion. And so I saw Bobby did this, I wanted to come and give, one, some context, some understanding around, one, how the situation was handled by the university, and two, just some context around the incident, and then also talk about some other things. Just so you all know my context, I received this incident via Facebook post on Thursday night. I informed the proper campus authorities that it happened, and then I spent most of Thursday in OCL with Dr. Ah, Assistant Vice President Amanda Taylor, and a few other people, kind of crafting how we think the university should respond to this. And so one is, the thing to know is that, one of the important things to know is that the person wearing the Confederate flag sweatshirt was not an AU student or someone related to the AU community in any way. They were a guest of an AU student here. So that's kind of an important understanding to have to start off. Two, they were found in no violation of any campus policies or laws. When AUPD was called multiple times by different entities about the student. When AUPD came to the scene and evaluated some of the things that were happening, they found the student to be in no violation of any campus policies, AUPD procedures, laws, anything like that. They were legally in TDR. TDR is open to anyone who chooses to dine there, as long as they obviously pay what they need to pay to eat there. And so that's just some important things. In terms of how the decision-making process and the response thing happened, Friday morning information was gathered. Several stakeholders, including members of the Center for Diversity and Inclusion, Office of Campus Life, myself, my other co-chair of the Student Advisory Committee, kind of participated in kind of a fact-finding because at the moment we hadn't a clear picture of what had happened. We just had that one, a few Facebook posts. And so that required consulting with AUPD, reading their reports on the incident. There's always reports, listening to the calls that were made to AUPD about the incident, and understanding from a few different people who were in TDR at the time what had actually occurred and things that had gone down. And so that was done, that information was found out. Several students who had some interaction with the student or who had made complaints about it were contacted by Dr. Ah to be talked to and Consuelo Greer in the Center for Diversity and Inclusion. A few of them responded. Several of them did not. And so after that, there was conversations around having a community town hall. There were conversations around releasing a statement. And so after some thought and consideration, we felt that the campus community didn't need a town hall or a conversation of that. One, it was Friday afternoon. And so the people were off doing things and participating in other activities. Two, from what I could tell, from what other people could tell of the campus climate and pulse, that there wasn't, while it was an egregious act, there wasn't a huge sense of need for conversation. But with that, we decided that it is always good to reaffirm our university's values and what this university holds important, and what is the core of what this university stands for. And so that statement was released by Dr. on Friday afternoon, saying we're gathering information. Again, we don't have a clear picture. But again, this university stands on diversity, inclusion, respectfulness. And then obviously on Tuesday, more information was released as some of that happened. And then I will say, in terms of one of the things that is always thought about when making statements like this is the outside people always pick it up. So there's always the thought and understanding of if we make a statement and the way we make a statement might conjure up a reaction from outside AU, from different constituencies. And so understanding that, recognizing that there might be security threats that come along with that, and balancing all of that is also part of what decision goes into making statements like this around issues like this. Besides that, I think it's important that the student government and the Senate make statements like this. It's important that we're representative of students, and so we, make statements on campus issues that come up. But I'm here to answer any questions you might have, clarify any things, or you might have. Just another stakeholder that was brought into this that I forgot to mention is the President's Council on Diversity and Inclusion was consulted on all of this on Friday, and that body made recommendations and decisions and thought about that. And that body is comprised of stakeholders from across the campus, including students, faculty, staff, and administrators. And so that was just another campus body that was a part of the decision-making process. So with that, I'll be quiet and you guys ask questions.
Other discussion, debate on the resolution? Curtis?
Well, do we know the identity of the AU student who brought the guests to TDR, and also has that student been conversed with by Dr. All or someone in the administration, just so we can get a sense of why the guest of an AU student wear a Confederate to you?
So that identity is known, but the identity of the student is known, and Dr. All has talked to that student. I do not know the outcomes of that conversation, as that student's information is confidential. But one of the things that is the question of, right, is why that, but also is the importance of it not being an AU student is the notion of that at AU, we make it a point to educate our students in our community about what symbols and what connotations symbols have and what understandings people have about certain symbols and representations of things. But it being a non-AU student, they don't necessarily have that education around the symbol, but yes, that person is known and has been talked to.
Sean?
Just a question for the sponsor, if I could. So Bobby, I noticed that the last line, it says that we are calling on university administration to prevent any proud displays of the Confederate flag in the future. So in terms of the educational context, if a professor were to display it on a PowerPoint to educate students on it regarding the historical context, does that also apply to that, or does it not?
I don't think it would, because, like Raphael said, it's important that people know the history behind these symbols and events and conversations. But what I'm talking about is, I don't know how exactly this could have been prevented, but proud displays, I'm considering like this thing where this guy was wearing like a Confederate flag costume in TDR. There were Confederate flag posters put up in academic buildings last year. I haven't experienced anything like this at AU, but I submit like hypothetically, it could be like there's some weird rally on the quad where people are waving around Confederate flags. That's the sort of thing that I'm talking about, crowd displays.
Other discussion or debate on the resolution? Tyler?
I have a few things. The first is that, obviously the Confederate flag is a symbol, it's a symbol of, that's gonna be different for a lot of people. And I'm not saying that it has a good connotation, but I don't believe that we as a body should be, telling anybody, like condemning something. I think, the freedom of speech is important, and I think that Dr. Oz stressed that in her like her emails, and just like the whole university administration part of it, like they did what they could. I think they were well within their rights to do what they tried to do, but I don't think that they should have done more. They really couldn't have done more. I just don't think that this is a good idea. That's all I have to say.
Bobby?
So two things, about the, like ability or the flexibility of the administration to do certain things. I think that is definitely a legitimate point, and I'd be interested to hear what other members have to say. But about the symbolism of the Confederate flag, like I said, I am someone who does value like bringing ideological diversity to campus, and I like recognize that people have different interpretations of different symbols. But the Confederate flag, I think, is something of all the symbols that we can be really comfortable denouncing. And I would like offer this to anyone who disagrees with me or hasn't made up their mind to a thought experiment to try to differentiate it from the Nazi flag. If someone was wearing a Nazi flag around campus, whether or not we think that the university has a legal or administrative ability to remove them, we are definitely comfortable denouncing them in our official capacity as the Undergraduate Senate. We would be comfortable saying we condemn the Nazi flag. I think that goes without question that everyone is on the same page with that. Now, if you're not sure whether that applies to the Confederate flag or you don't think it applies to the Confederate flag, you need to provide a reason why the Confederate flag is less threatening or hateful of a symbol than the Nazi flag, and I don't think that such a reason exists. There is a mythology around the Confederate flag, but it is just mythology. And in actuality, like there is no different levels of hatefulness or threateningness implied by the Confederate flag than by the Nazi flag.
Piper?
I just want to say that whether the university has the ability to remove a person with a hate symbol or not, the point of condemning this action and calling upon them to do so is establishing the fact that the Senate disagrees with hate symbols, disagrees with their place among AU on campus, and is trying to affirm that AU is a place of positive inclusivity of people. And whether the university takes that action in the future or not, I think Senate should take the stance against those symbols, because hate symbols are hate symbols. Like, let's take them seriously as what they are.
Jacob?
I, as somebody who's sponsoring this, I'd like to just speak for just a few moments on why I'm sponsoring this. As Bobby was explaining, I'm usually somebody who thinks that the resolutions don't usually do much, that just debates that go on and on and on about whether or not we should do this or that, like sometimes I just feel like it doesn't really matter. I really, though, have to say, I think this one really does matter for the reasons that Piper laid out and for so many other reasons. This university has a really painful history with the Confederate flag. And there's now, obviously you can read about it in the Eagle, studies going on about where our relationship is with slavery and things like that. This was an event that made people feel very uncomfortable. this was an event that made people feel like they were unwelcome. Now, obviously, the student was not from AU, but if we are going to be educating people on these symbols that are hurtful and painful and cause a lot of profound grief to a lot of different groups, then we need to think about, as an undergraduate body, how we'll support that message. And I believe this resolution does that. I, of course, stand for free speech and believe that everybody has the right to express, whatever it is they're feeling. What I don't believe in is when that speech really starts to infringe on other people's safeties and securities. And I think this resolution is a really important step in us acknowledging that there are these symbols that people feel profoundly uncomfortable and pain with, and we need to be supporting that message and making certain that this body supports them.
Parker?
And just adding on to what Senator Newlander said, this campus, I think it's important to keep in mind, this campus has like a very intense, long history of incidents of hate speech, racially motivated. And I mean, let's just keep it real, the Senate and really the student body for that matter is not particularly diverse. Could do a lot better in that realm. So I think for the Senate to just remain silent on issues like this would just continue that. Now, you can say, oh, this isn't going to do much, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. And just to stay silent on it would just perpetuate, I think, at least from what I've heard, and I don't want to speak for everyone, but from what I've heard from students of color here on campus, they feel alienated on a lot of these issues because people make excuses for it, or they use free speech as a means of upholding the history that AU has, and I think it's important that we at least take a step.
And Lisa?
Yeah, so all I would like to say is dismissing this resolution is equivalent to not acknowledging the hate or implication that the Confederate flag has. Now, I think prior to dismissing this whole resolution, it's necessary to educate oneself on the history of the Confederate flag. While yes, it is freedom of speech, it is also hateful rhetoric that impacts particularly students of color on campus. That's all I would like to say.
Tyler?
I just want to say that, first of all, I'm not like entirely opposed to like passing a resolution, but the way this is worded, I don't agree with that. I think it would have to be something more along the lines of like, we recognize this is a hateful symbol, yet at the same time, we also recognize people's freedom of speech and expression. And that's honestly the bottom line, where people like the KKK, that example has been brought up a few times. We don't like it. Nobody really likes the KKK, but it's not illegal to wear a KKK costume like in public. I just think it's just not, I'm sorry, I'm sick and can't really put my thoughts into words coherently, but yeah, I just don't.
Max?
I just want to say that, well, it might be legal to wear a KKK foot in public, or I can, run with a Nazi flag down Main Street. We are not a public university. We are a private university that can set the values and the standards which it wants to uphold and impart to the students, the staff, the faculty, and the visitors who come to this campus. And I think that's imperative that we make it clear that while we do value free speech, there is an extent where free speech can result, that free speech morphing into hate speech can create an environment where the people at this school do not feel comfortable. whether it's a Nazi flag, whether it's a KKK hood, whether it is a Confederate flag on a sweatshirt, I think this is unacceptable. I think that we need to set the standard starting from the administration, from the fellow students, and from students in positions of leadership that we are in the Senate, that it's simply not acceptable.
Bobby?
You know, I think, insofar as the wording of the resolution is concerned, the prospect of adding, a recognition of people's freedom of speech, like I have said, already, like that my personal actions, and positions testify to my, value of ideological diversity, and AUSG makes it a point, with you, to bring people, who students disagree with, in order to engage students in productive, thoughts and conversations. American University makes it a priority with their actions to challenge students' points of view with the Sign Institute and with just classes in general. We take a class, the professor brings up ideas that you don't agree with, and you have to grapple with that, and it's an exercise for your mind. But if we were to explicitly include wording recognizing the freedom of speech of people to have the Confederate flag or whatever hateful symbol that you bring up, that would, in my opinion, put the Confederate flag like supporters and opposition on equal grounds, where it's not quite to the extent, but it's approaching, saying that there are very fine people on both sides. And I would bring up again the example of the Nazi flag. If there were Nazis having a rally on the Quad, and we said, like, we had a resolution that says, on the one hand, we condemn the Nazis, but on the other hand, we recognize their freedom of speech, we would be seeming as a body to be saying, you know, it's a wash. So the point of this is to take a stance, yes, and that involves taking a stance against someone. And I think that this body should be eminently comfortable taking a stance saying, we as representatives of the student body reject the Confederate flag.
Parker?
And in this discussion, I think it's important that like we should give deference to like students of color, because like perspectives matter in this, and like let's kind of acknowledge that this is like mostly a discussion of like the white people. Like there's a point to be made that perspectives matter and that there's different scopes when we talk about this. So I think we should definitely give deference to students of color and their voices in this, because this is obviously racially charged, and there's a discrepancy in this discussion.
Curtis?
Mr. Speaker and Senate, I just think that I hear the concerns on both sides with Tyler and other parties. I think that Rafa had a good point to say is that, correct me if I'm wrong, that the university decided that a town hall specifically was not an appropriate response to this situation, but I think we could, as an undergraduate senate, as student government, we can host a community roundtable similar to the one that was held on January 30th about, you know, AU working groups on the influence of slavery at AU and across America. So I think that it's good for us to pass or consider a resolution to stand with minorities and on our campus, but it's also another thing to take action and to host roundtables and conversations to move forward into a positive future.
Raphael?
I just want to make two statements. One, I would encourage you all to remember that I'm not making sense of the way that you're a representative body. So think about what the majority of your constituents would appreciate you doing in terms of making the resolution or not. That's one. Also, I would encourage people not to assume people's relation to minority groups. And so that would be my mistake.
Madison?
Hi. I usually try not to speak during Senate meetings, but I feel need to speak up right now. I'm also the vice president of the NAACP, so I apologize, Bobby, for not getting back to you. But I can speak on behalf of the organization that we would appreciate the Senate recognizing and condemning this action. I think there's a really big difference in free speech and hate speech, and they're not to be conflated at all. Free speech doesn't have like repercussions. If someone said the N-word to me, those are fighting words. If someone wears a Confederate flag around Black people, those are fighting action. So it's a really big difference, and I think, like it was said, this is a representative body. You're supposed to be representing students. The fact that it's not entirely representative in demographics, I think that means you have the responsibility to be representative in your actions. In condemning things like hate speech, even though this was hate speech necessarily, is something that the Senate should give a priority and recognize that it's literally equivalent to a Nazi symbol. And I think the fact that not recognizing that it's an equivalent is an insult to Black Americans.
Yeah, just to make a point, similar to what Maddie's saying, not acknowledging this resolution is equivalent to shunning more marginalized communities on campus. I would say, is equivalent to just saying, yeah, it happened and nothing's going to be done. Second, when they say use your privilege to change the world, it's taken seriously. Look around in this room, mainly white people in the Senate. I'm literally the only woman of color in the undergraduate Senate, at least Black woman in the undergraduate Senate. I hold that very proudly, but also you have to consider my voice is one that is different from all other white people on campus. And my experience is unique from what other people experience on campus. Now, with that point is that just take into consideration the different viewpoints in the room, and just because you don't necessarily agree with it, just acknowledge that it does have a racial implication to marginalized communities on campus, and just use your privilege to change the world.
Jacob?
Yeah, I want to speak to the point that was made about representing our constituents. You know, as the senator for Cass, an ongoing conversation is always about having courses that involve more professors of color, more things that we can do to change the curriculum so that it's all inclusive. I also want to point out that, you know, I mentioned this previously, but I've done a little bit more like digging. You know, you can read an article that was published in the Eagle on February 1st, which is all about this university's connections to slavery. I'm not going to get into it. It's a very well written article, but I think for us not to pass this resolution is like be a major slap in the face and would not at all be doing justice to these conversations that need to be happening for us to really kind of like continue to move forward as a community.
Tyler?
At first, I just have a question for you.
Yeah.
When, like, reading this resolution to you specifically, the part about the second whereas, and then the second to last, therefore be it further resolved, do you find those to be factually correct?
The thereas, the right to remove the individual in the operation of TDR. So as someone stated, we are a or a private university. So we do have certain amount of rights in terms of what is allowed, where private property, there are certain things we're allowed to do. Now, there are operating procedures that AUPD and this university follow in terms of who's allowed on campus, why they're allowed on campus, all these different things. And from the officer standpoint and the administration of AUPD, this person was lawfully here. Now, there's a larger conversation around that can be had around whether there's been a policy change that needs to happen around, you know, if there's someone that's causing, you know, emotional harm and stuff like that to people, whether they're allowed to be on this campus. But from the information that I have gathered from the powers that be, they did everything in their power legally with the student TDR. Now, that doesn't mean that this body can't hold the stance that they believe that they still should be able to remove that person from TDR. This body has every right to say, we believe that that person should not be allowed to TDR. Just because it's against university policy doesn't make that right or wrong. You have the power to say you don't agree with university policy or that you believe that that person should be removed from TDR. In terms of the second one, to tell where as administration and AP, can AU public safety officers decline to tell this individual to leave TDR after being asked to do so by concerned students? That they were asked, the APD was called. I do not know the extent of what was asked from the APD officers. I believe from my knowledge is, I have not listened to the calls, is that they were just, that these people were informing APD that this person was in TDR with this symbol on. I don't know if the calls were asking APD to remove the person from TDR, but they did not remove the person from TDR because, yeah, that would be the information that I have.
Okay, so, I would, sorry. Could we amend this resolution to, I feel like it's kind of like victimizing or not victimizing, sorry. Like it's just putting a lot of blame on the university where I think that like they follow their own operating procedures. And I don't know that that's something like that. I don't think that's like a fight that we should be picking. Like, can we just change it to be a little like less confrontational, I guess?
Are you posing a question or are you making an amendment?
That was just a question.
Okay,
If that's something that we can do.
Piper.
Well, just in response to that, I think that Confederate flag in and of itself is confrontational, to where it is confrontational. I really think this resolution is basically bare minimum of what Senate can do.
Thank you.
Like, sure. It's just, I really think we should think about our body, our student body, go on campus and go ahead and pass this resolution. Further actions the Senate wants to take, I think would be good. Like just to, people can discuss different ideas of what we want to do and if we would like to change policy or whatever, but this is bare minimum. Confederate flag, bad. Senate does not like Confederate flag. I think that's pretty much what we're saying here. So let's just go ahead and say that.
Sean?
And then just going off what Piper said, something of this magnitude deserves, like she said, at the bare minimum, something with language that specifically gives this the importance that it deserves. And then also by not passing it, we're sending a standard that it invites other people to do the same. And God forbid something happens to where violence is inflicted and people are harmed. So I think, like Piper said, at the bare minimum, this is at least the very minimum that we can do to be representative of our constituents and then also to be proactive and then prevent something such as violence from further escalating.
Sarah?
I would absolutely agree that this is by far a bare minimum statement, and we should definitely look at, initiatives to further to help remedy this problem and this problem that continues to happen on this campus. But I think at the same time, in response to that, it's very confrontational. I think, in my interpretation, the university has a responsibility to uphold the rights of all students and ensure that they're comfortable in this campus as well, because not only is it a place of learning, but it's also a place of living. I mean, everybody here either lives in the community or lives directly on campus. And I think that to have an instance in which students don't feel safe in the extent that so many students called in, that by far this is truly a bare minimum action. We should be doing more for our students.
Max?
As far as what Tyler was saying about, whether what we're currently doing is not only does it say this is not acceptable, but it also is kind of like casting some blame on the university as far as they should be doing more. I understand that within their operating policies, they may have, satisfied that, but I think this goes to the concept that just because rules or laws are in place does not mean that they're right. During the Holocaust, if I was a Jew, I would have to be, I would do horrible things, right? Jim Crow laws, that was legal at the time, but are we saying that was right? No, so we have the conversation about it, which thus encourages us to change rules and laws which enable horrible practices. And I think that what we have here is a horrible action. And I think something like this beckons us to implore the university to do something so that such situations do not further rise.
Wayne?
just like echoing everybody, it's just like, it's making certain overall, like, you know, if by passing the resolution, it's just a good thing that we're recognizing the issue immediately while we're in session, but also, excuse me. It sets good precedent for the future because it also recognizes the fact that, you know, we realize the students' concerns, and I personally, like, just can't believe that response that was taken by the university law. I do think it's done in an effective manner. I think the commission has done it. Recognizing that students that were immediately affected by that in the room, they should have done more to recognize that students come first before outsiders, and they should do more to protect the students and understand everything involved about that.
Raphael?
To the statement that was made by some senators, as a student leader in general, you're not bound by university policies. Administration isn't bound by university policies. You work for this university. You're not bound by any of that. It doesn't have any implication on your decision. And two, as a student leader, your job is to represent students, right? And so even if you're in the minority opinion or you're against the university, it's important that you speak up and share that voice, because not every student has the ability to be in the office with, you know, administrators and say, this is what we feel, this is how we feel, this is not what we believe in. So I would implore you to not necessarily think about whether this is going to upset the university or not. I made many a statement on Friday when this happened that was not favorable to the university, but it's my job to do so. And so that I will say that. And finally, because I have to run, I will say that the next item on the agenda, the election of the chair for diversity and inclusion, is an important part of what we're talking about now, because they are an important part of the conversation. There's a lot of continuous work to be done around making this university more inclusive, this as part of it. So I implore you to make that decision with heavy thoughts.
Bobby?
So I think this will probably be the last thing I say, but I just want to touch on like the administrative like flexibility side of things. And I think it would be useful if we talk in very specific terms about what actually happened. And then the information that I'm basing this off of, I got from a Facebook post on the night of the incident. Some student, I don't remember her name, but it was some student who witnessed the incident and was writing about it. So very specifically, she asked this administrator who I've met briefly before, his name is Ross something. He's the manager of TDR. Curtis could tell you more in specific, but he's some kind of manager of TDR. And the student asked him to say to the Confederate flag guy, like, whatever, will you take it off, etc. I don't know exactly what she asked. And Ross said no, because of freedom of speech. So if we look at that, like a very specific example of what actually happened in concrete terms, I think like it's not a stretch of the imagination at all to say, hey, manager of TDR, you can go up to this guy and say, hey, Confederate flag guy, you are making students here uncomfortable, please remove your jacket. I think like that is like totally within their ability as the TDR manager. I think like that's a very mild action.
Jacob?
I just want to say, I think we are all in agreement. The Confederate flag is a bad symbol. We as an undergraduate body, this is the least we can do. I want to implore everybody here to think about, you know, whether or not this resolution, the wording needs to change or whatever, and make those suggestions, because I think we're all in agreement that this is the bare minimum we can do. If anybody has any suggestions, then about how to make this resolution better or how to change it, I would say make those suggestions. But I think we're in agreement that the university needs to change its policies. We're in agreement that the Confederate flag is a bad symbol. This resolution, I think, implores the university to do that. It's the bare minimum. And if anybody has any ideas or anything, now would be the time to do that.
Lila?
I usually don't comment either, but what I'm hearing a lot is that people agree that the university needs to find ways to address this or at least revisit policies and operating procedures around how they respond to hate speech. And so I would suggest, if I were a senator, to amend the language to say that we urge the university administration to revisit its operating procedures around hate speech, because I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to say. say. That's a lot of what I'm hearing on both sides of this discussion. And additionally, I have to leave because it's our board meeting. Our mini board meeting was at 4 p.m. But there's a directive around and Bobby has all the information on it. You can message me if you have questions.
Tyler.
I'm gonna move to amend the resolution to, remove the entire section that from therefore to attire.
This one.
Yeah. And then to add what, I'm sorry, I don't know your names. What Vice President suggested.
Okay, what's the wording you wish to see?
But I would say the undergraduate senate strongly urges the university administration.
Whoa.
Sorry.
Okay, now give me your wording.
The undergraduate senate strongly urges that the university administration revisit its policies, the operating procedure.
Operating, you said operating policies?
For operating procedures, revisit its policies regarding operating procedures. Operating procedures.
Oh, okay, the undergraduate senate strongly urges that the university administration
Revisits its policies
its policies
regarding their operating
regarding operating procedures. In response to these.
in response to hate speech. What do you say?
In response to hate speech.
I would say and symbols. I mean, I know that they're the same thing, but I just think delineating.
Well, it's your amendment, so whatever you want it to say.
Also, I think you need to say resolved, not acted.
Yes, thank you. Is the wording you wish to see, Tyler?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a second?
I will second it if I am permitted to talk about it and make an amendment to the amendment.
Well, you can,
Yeah,
as long as
so
it's.
I'm just saying.
You're gonna
so
second?
So you
Okay.
recognize me. Like, I'm like fine telling the university in addition to all the things we say in this university to revisit their policies, that's perfectly productive. I do not agree with the removal of the saying like that we believe them to already have the ability to ask these people to leave, because like I've said, I think they're like, it just makes so much sense to say, I'm the manager of this cafeteria. You are making all these students uncomfortable. Please remove your jacket or leave. So I would amend the amendment, if anyone is amenable to that, to unstriking the original resolve clause and then moving this part about revisiting operating procedures below that resolve clause.
Okay, so you are putting
It would become the
this one.
third resolved clause for
Okay.
new language. And I do hope that someone seconds this. motion.
Second.
Thank you.
Here a second, so now we will discuss. We are discussing the change in the wording and unstriking that. Is there discussion on that amendment to the amendment? Curtis.
Mr. Speaker, just to clarify for the Senate and the student body, Ross Carlson is not an American University employee. He is an Aramark employee.
Does this pertain to the amendment?
Yes, it does, yes, it does, Mr. Speaker, because he is not an AU administrator. Therefore, if we would like to address Ross Carlson, we have to make that clear statement, that clear differentiator between who is a university employee and who is not a university employee. Because Anne Marie Powell has clearly stated that, Ross Carlson is an Aramark manager here at American University. He is not an American University administrator or employee. Therefore, he follows Aramark policy.
Got it.
If I may,
Okay.
Mr. Speaker, I
Bobby.
defy anyone in this room to find one other student who cares about that distinction respectfully. So I don't think we should spend time adding a third layer of amendments to clarify the employment status of Ross Carlson. I think this is good enough.
Max.
I very much agree, Bobby.
But Mr. Speaker, point of order, Senator Zitzman wants to address Ross Carlson as an AU administrator, and that is clearly unfactual. He is not.
This doesn't deal with Ross specifically. This
Correct,
just
but
says
that's
AU
university
administrator.
policy, and so they're operating in the university,
Right.
so they have to follow the university. So we're saying the university needs to change its policy, and if everybody who works within the university, it's so
But
bare minimum.
he works with the university.
We're out
He's not-
we're out of order.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, thank
We're out of
you.
order.
Prepositions
We're
are.
Speaker needs to.
Is there discussion on unstriking this part of the amendment? Tyler.
Just because I was the one that amended striking it, that's like the one thing that would prevent me from voting to pass this resolution. If that part of it is, stays unstruck. Obviously, I can't imagine a scenario where there will not be enough votes to pass the resolution, but if it remains in the resolution, I won't vote on it.
Other discussion. Curtis.
Mr. Speaker, when we as the, I am 100% for this resolution.
We're talking about the amendment to
Yes,
the
yes.
amendment.
But the amendment to the amendment needs to include who is a part of the AU administrators that we are talking about. We need to specifically.
So we're not talking about that specifically.
Okay.
We're talking about unstriking this amendment.
Okay, I second that.
Okay, Jacob.
I support this amendment because I think included in university administrators would be AUPD, who could have had, should have removed the person. They're under university administrators. That's why I think this wording is fine.
Okay. Other discussion on the pink. Seeing none, we will vote. All of those in favor of unstriking what's in pink, say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay. Independent chairs, the ayes have it, and therefore it is
Can I ask unanimous consent that the whole amendment now be adopted?
Where'd my mouse go? Hold up.
Now we have a whole yellow amendment.
Okay, now we're back to this full amendment. What was your motion?
Unanimous consent for the yellow.
Second.
Here's second. Is there objection? Hearing no objection, it is adopted. Now we are back to the resolution as a whole. Max.
Motion to end the date and to a vote on the bill.
Second.
I hear a second. All those in favor of closing debate and moving to vote, say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed, say nay. Being the chair, the ayes have it. Now, in terms of resolution 18-19-002, all in favor of adopting the resolution in its current format as a yay.
Yay.
All those opposed, say nay. Being the chair, the ayes have it, and it is adopted. Okay, that takes care of that. Now, moving to the election of the chair for the Special Committee on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Sean.
I move to nominate.
Whoa, hold up. You're jumping the gun here. Are there other motions not relating to this line item? Great. The floor is now open for nominations. Sean,
I move to nominate Senator Jenkins to the position of Chair of the DEI Committee.
is there a second?
Second.
I hear a second. Do you accept?
I do.
Are there other nominations? Seeing none. The floor is now closed.
Motion for unanimous consent on the nomination.
Second.
Second.
Does the nomination do first? One of them.
So I would offer two options. One, either letting the process go through, like let the whole process forward, or two, suspending the rules to move right to voting and skipping the presentation and the questions. Those are the two options you have.
Do you want to speak?
I mean, I don't mind just
It's
giving
up
a
to-
few thoughts on what like I have in store.
It's up to you. Tyler, wait, hold on. Tyler, do you have a motion?
I do,
What's the motion?
to move to a vote.
So you move to suspend the rules and skip right to right to voting.
Yes.
Is there a second? I hear a second. Debate on whether or not to suspend the rules.
Just my only concern is
Piper?
whether Lisa wants to say
Thanks,
this.
On one hand, I would love to hear what Annalisa has to say. On the other hand, based on the number of seconds there were to her nomination, I believe the room is pretty much in agreement and are trusting Annalisa to deliver. And if we want to keep moving forward, from my understanding, the room's ready to vote her in.
Sean?
I move to vote on the motion.
Okay. Is there a second to? Okay. Okay. Discussion on closing debate on whether or not to suspend the rules. Seeing none. All those in favor of moving to vote on suspending the rules say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed say nay. Great. Now, all those in favor of suspending the rules and moving to the voting phase say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed say nay. In the opinion of the chair, the 2/3 is met based on voting members. Therefore, the rules are suspended and we're moving to voting. Which is by secret ballot, technically.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules.
I think that's in the bylaws.
Really?
It's in the rules debate quorum that it has to, but you just suspended the rules.
Yes, I move to suspend the
I
rules.
don't
Since
think-
we only
You
have
can
one
move
candidate.
to change the voting method.
I move to change the voting method to,
Unanimous
Okay,
consent.
hold on. That's just not everybody talking.
There's a motion to vote.
by unanimous consent.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Is there any objection to voting by unanimous consent?
Doing two layers of objections.
Actually, no, you're right, sorry. All those in favor of voting by unanimous consent say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed say nay. Fantastic. Now, is there any objection to electing Senator Jenkins as the chair of DEI? Hearing no objections, I can confirm that Senator Jenkins is now the chair. Welcome to parliamentary procedure. Fantastic. Okay. Now it will be up to DEI and Chairwoman Jenkins to determine a new vice chair for the committee. All right.
Sorry, do you mind repeating that?
You'll just have to meet and get a vice chair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a new vice chair.
Everybody's seen it.
Now, moving to resolution 1819-001, a resolution to oppose higher meal plan requirements.
And just like the past resolution, Jacob has also requested to be added as a sponsor on this as well. So there's that.
Okay.
And if you have not corrected Wayne's name yet, it's Rodriguez with a Q.
What? Rodriguez is a G, isn't it?
Well, not it's with a Q.
What?
I have a whisper here. His name is literally Rodriguez.
He can speak from experience.
I've been spelling everything with a G.
Yeah. But yeah. Yeah. No, it's fine though, because it's easier to order, that's why I don't like.
What?
But that was Puerto Rican way.
Okay, well, okay. I want to fix everything then. What the heck? Why didn't you tell me sooner?
It's what it is.
Wow, okay. Would the sponsor like to speak on the
Yeah,
resolution?
so, this, like, we're familiar with the subject matter here, so I won't go into too much depth on that. If anyone has any questions about, the dining proposals here, I can answer those when we get to questioning time. But I will use this time to say, just for, reference, that I think the advocacy around this dining issue has been a really good example of what our advocacy should be like in a lot of ways. We talked with administrators and we really understand the issue. We collaborate with campus partners. We got the RHA, they're having their meeting tomorrow about this issue with administrators. Campus press has been on the issue, so we're doing collaboration. We are, fielding these meetings before we do legislation, so that, we've got everything in place by the time we need to make a statement. And then we're capping it off by making this official statement on behalf of the Undergraduate Senate with all these people collaborating on the issue as listed as at the top. So I think we, so far have done a good job on this. There's been a lot of people involved, and I think, like, of all the things we do, not a lot of them actually come to fruition, but I am relatively confident that the student body in general, with us being a part of that, can successfully avert this higher dining requirement. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions for the sponsor, Wayne?
I just want to add on, I think it's important to recognize just overall how dining services have just been very, they've been pushing so hard to try to make sure this succeeds, but they're not really recognizing how people, like students and parents alike, do not respect what they're trying to do. Especially with the recent incident with the meeting that I went to with a few other senators regarding the reporter being sent away. I think they're not doing their best to still try to make their message right and try to actually promote whatever they're trying to sell. I do not agree with anything that is going on with the meal plan system. They're not doing their best to actually respond to students. They can easily see what's going on Facebook with their social media accounts, yet they do not actually fulfill any of it and do not respect the wishes of the student and majority of the body. So I do believe this is important to pass because, this is the cost of students, this is a very expensive plan, and the mandates that they're holding, it's just not common sense policy one for the future.
Is that a question?
So he's a sponsor.
Oh, he's a sponsor, so
Yeah.
he can't speak.
So,
Sean?
Just to add for this bill, what's really negative about this is that it disproportionately affects rising sophomores as well as incoming freshmen. And I think if we look at this in a whole picture, if we really want to appear as welcoming as possible to new prospective students, it's really unfair that we're implementing this and really closing the door. And I was even speaking to Senator Jenkins about this privately. I really feel for those who are here on loans or who are here on other mechanisms of financial support, because their parents and themselves, they're exerting their fullest extent to come here and to be an active participant in this university. And for something like this, it really inhibits their ability to do so. And so just in totality, I think that this is a negative repercussion for our university. And I really would like my colleagues to vote in favor of this resolution.
just to clarify, we are in question time right now.
Yeah. Parker?
Speaking as a sponsor, just to provide some context, myself, Senator Geisler, the other Senator Robbins who left, we, if y'all didn't know, we met before, like last semester with Anne Marie, with the head of auxiliary services, with Antoine, about this issue, and they assured us multiple times that one of their top priorities was not raising the requirement for sophomores as well as incoming freshmen. And obviously they did not uphold that commitment to us. As well, they also gave a survey that they sent via email. So I encourage everyone here to not only fill it out, but spread it to other people, because the only way to truly produce the kind of results that we want to see is not just passing these bills, but getting students to speak up on the issues. So please, if you can, just like spread that survey. We want as many people expressing their disapproval with this as possible, because Anton said that she really wants data to support the discontent that we're seeing online.
Tyler?
Two things. One, I think this is great. As we've been saying the whole meeting, like we're a representative body, and you literally can't like walk across campus without hearing people complain about this right now. The second one is just maybe a question, maybe
Is a question?
What?
Is a question?
Well, kind of. Just the title, should it say a resolution to oppose?
Oh, yeah.
A resolution opposed.
That's clerical.
Yeah.
Questions? Jacob?
Speaking as a sponsor, I want to say that one of the main reasons why I'm opposing this higher meal plan, I appreciate Anne Marie Powell and Chuck Smith coming and speaking to us and, furthering discussions with them, just them explaining why, the reasoning behind it and really trying to solicit as much feedback. My problem is simple, and I brought this up many times. For the increased amount that would be asking students to pay, I haven't heard a plan that would actually increase the services for what you're getting. I still think that wait times are a big issue, accuracy in what you order is a big issue, and what is being offered is still an issue. And until I hear a more cohesive plan to how they plan to improve that, I understand that they're gathering data, that they understand that there are things that are wrong, that are systemically wrong. I need to hear a more cohesive plan to justify increasing the meal plan, and I haven't heard that, so I can't, in good conscience, agree to this meal plan, which is why I've signed on to this.
Terry?
I'm speaking as a co-sponsor, and I just wanted to clarify on what Senator Butler said, that the survey is already over, that we cannot fill it out anymore. So just as information, so we can't spread it anymore since the survey is already over. The deadline was on this Friday, so yeah.
Curtis?
Would the sponsor or any of the co-sponsors be willing to amend the title to say any proposed higher meal plan requirements, just because I feel that this resolution is a bit preemptive, considering that the final meeting with the student body is with the Residence Hall Association tomorrow evening, and if Anne Marie or Charles Smith brings a new proposal to the table or solutions to our concerns, I think that we should wait for the RHA to weigh in on this issue, just because they have a high stake in it, because the new meal plan proposals and requirements will require second-year residents to, to take the increased prices. So would the sponsor be willing to wait till the Residence Hall Association and its members and the residents of American University have a conversation with the dining director tomorrow evening?
No, respectfully, to the changing the title to any proposed higher meal plan requirements, that means, as far as I can see, no actual difference in a resolution to oppose higher meal plan requirements. As a matter of fact, my personal beliefs, and I feel comfortable speaking on behalf of all the sponsors, I oppose higher meal plan requirements, period, including these proposed ones. So I don't want to add extra words to the title, because I like, punchy titles, and I don't want to make it too wordy. Waiting for the RHA, no, I don't want to do that. We've seen our proposal. It's referenced in the resolution that we had a proposal. We're disagreeing with it. And on top of that, Anne Marie told both of us personally when we were at the Dining Advisory Board Committee the other week that she is going to present the RHA the same proposal that she presented us. Now, she could not do that, but she's indicated that she will. And I suspect from talking with RHA board members that their opposition will be just the same opposition that we have and is shown across the campus community. So I don't feel uncomfortable speaking before the RHA does, because I suspect that they will agree with us. And even if they didn't agree with us, I still feel comfortable as a body taking a position, knowing that we're an independent group from the RHA and we also represent residents. So yeah, I think this resolution, as good as it is, and that we need to pass it now in order to have it delivered to the relevant administrators in time for them to modify their proposals, if they are honest with us saying that they value student feedback.
Jacob?
Yeah, and then just responding to what you were saying, Curtis, I just want to make it clear, while I'm not speaking for everybody, one of my big things will just always be, until I hear a concrete plan for what services will be increased, I can't justify supporting any meal plan that would raise, costs. Because at the end of the day, I think many of us can agree that the fact that many dining establishments are not open on the weekends, that the hours are not great, and that the selections that are available are not the healthiest, and also do not always get you in the most timely manner, that's a non-starter for me. So I can't support a meal plan that would raise the costs without hearing any kind of plan to increase services, period, full stop.
Any other questions? Yes.
Would you consider adding a clause inside of the resolution that states your concerns? Because I think that's really important, because the cost of tuition, the cost of meal plans, it's inevitable, but at the same time, as Anne Marie has stated at the Dining Advisory Board meeting, just because I don't want the undergraduate senate to pass this resolution and they just see it as a piece of paper. I want them to know that these are the reasons why we are passing this resolution. So would you consider adding a clause saying, whereas exactly what you told me?
Yes, I would.
Great.
And I once again, I don't want to speak for the other sponsors, but I don't know if this would be the time to make a resolution, since it's still the question, but yes, I would entertain that. And if the other sponsors would also entertain that, I think that's an important element, because I think what you're getting at is, instead of us just saying we disagree, and here's a potential solution.
Yes, I would be fine entertaining the idea of adding like services as a reason why we oppose higher meal plan requirements, but I have to push back on the idea that we're just like shouting without providing our reasoning, because it's right there in the whereas clauses. Whereas this would significantly raise prices, whereas affordability is a top priority for student government, whereas this body specifically committed to more flexible meal plans last year in its report, whereas it's incumbent on the undergraduate senate to express the will of students, which has been resounding. I think those are 4 solid independent reasons that we outlined explicitly in the beginning of the resolution. So yeah, I would be fine adding services as an additional reason, but I reject the notion that we don't provide the logic why we oppose the meal plan proposal in the resolution as it currently stands.
Parker?
I would not be inclined to support that amendment, because I just think that we should flat out not support raising the requirements, because what they're talking about is raising the block requirement for example, for incoming sophomores. When we met with them, they didn't provide a specific reason as to why they were doing so. I know the Aramark focus groups mentioned food insecurity, and then a reason for raising the amount of meal swipes that you're supposed to have. And then we mentioned that to Anne Marie, and she said that was not the reasoning. So they don't have a solid reason as to why they're raising these requirements, which of course raises the concern that this is just simply just for profit. And so I think it's important that we just find out to support raising the requirements, and I'm all for offering alternatives, but I don't think we should give an avenue by which we support raising requirements, even in the scenario that we're talking about.
Other questions?
I just have a point of view.
Yes.
What is our quorum?
I was wondering that too.
We're at 12 right now.
A second ago.
We're at 12.
Nobody leave, please.
What do you need for quorum?
11, I think.
believe we have money on the line coming up in a second. So Leila really needs these $2,000, so please don't leave.
Other questions? Great, seeing none, we're moving to discussion.
Are we in a period of discussion?
Yes. Yeah, majority is 11, so no one else leave. Yes, correct.
Mr. Speaker, I think that this resolution may be preemptive. I mean, Senator Zitzman did say that the Residence Hall Association will hear most likely, presumably, the same meal plan proposal. And they will also express its disapproval of the meal plan proposal. I think that the sponsor and the co-sponsors of this resolution should clearly state in the title that we oppose any proposed meal plans, just because we as a body do not want to seem antagonistic to the administration. At the same time, I think that if the co-sponsors and the sponsor would be willing to change this into a co-active resolution, I think that it will make us and the RHA both invested and both committed, because if Anne-Marie does present the same proposal tomorrow evening, I think the RHA will also, in its General Assembly, introduce a resolution similar to Senator Zitzman. And I think that a coactive resolution would send a stronger, I was planning for it after tomorrow's RHA discussion with Anne-Marie Pell. I just do not want to pass this resolution preemptively, especially if Anne-Marie and the administration in AU Dining has changed its proposals. We are assuming as a body that they will send the same proposal to the RHA, but we shouldn't assume that.
Bobby?
Yeah, so when Anne-Marie and Chuck came to us, I asked Chuck, number one, would you possibly entertain changing this? He said yes, pending student feedback. And number two, what is the timeline for students to give that feedback in order to affect some change? And he said the middle of February. Now, it's February 10th now. Next time we meet, it's February 17th. And if we were to do a coactive resolution with the RHA, it's going to be longer than that, perhaps even going into March. So if we actually want to get something done, we need to act within the window that the administrators laid out for us, which is the middle of February. That needs to be done today. Now, I think it's incumbent on the RHA to also oppose this, because they need to be committed to affordability as well. But that's their business. I don't think that we need to induce them to do it with a coactive resolution, which, by the way, is where the RHA and student government passed the same resolution through some fancy parliamentary business. Now, what else is there? Antagonism. If the university is raising prices that students are required to pay for meals that no one wants, like the amount of meals that no one ever uses in their entirety, I am not uncomfortable seeming antagonistic in that sense. It's our job to represent what the students want and to advocate for affordability in this sense. And if the administrators are against affordability, they are our antagonists, as a matter of fact, and we should act insofar as it helps students. Now, that's not to say that we need to be childish about it and, just toxic or hostile or what have you, but we can stake out our firm opposition to this. It could be the case that Anne-Marie and friends present a different proposal to the RHA tomorrow, but we have gotten our proposal. It's right there in the whereas clauses, January 27th. That was their proposal to the Undergraduate Senate, and this is us saying no. I think it's very comfortable, and we wouldn't seem preemptive or unnecessarily antagonistic in passing this today.
Jacob?
Yeah, I just want to respond to this whole idea that perhaps we're being preemptive. It's been indicated that Anne-Marie Powell said that she was going to present the same proposal to the RHA. I would say if she now decides to change that proposal, then I don't know if that's the best sort of PR move, right, for them to be able to get all that information. So I think that there's every indication that they're going to be presenting the same plan. I would say that in reading about, just from the internet and very anecdotally, so many people that I know oppose this plan. I think that I agree with Senator Zitzman, this is people's ability to come here and then their ability to also live, right? I mean, if a little antagonism and saying this is not something that we can actually afford to do as a community, I think that's well warranted. And I think everybody else perhaps would agree with me on that.
Terry?
Just wanted to clarify, we're not assuming that we know they're showing the same proposal, because Mary Ann Powell told us that they're not going to show us, because she told us that she already changed the proposal, but she's not willing to show us that to make further discussions, which is why we're not assuming that it's going to change. We know that it's the same proposal that will be presented to RHA, just to clarify.
Other points of discussion? Curtis?
Well, I will move to end debate on this resolution, and I think that the premise of this resolution is important, and that possibly we may need to add another clause saying that if AU Dining decides to send its current proposal to the Board of Trustees, that we encourage the Board of Trustees to vote down the higher meal plan proposals. Because, I mean, in the resolution, we clearly see that student government is addressing AU Dining, but we should also address the Board of Trustees, because if AU Dining decides not to listen, then we ought to send this resolution to the Board of Trustees.
Is that an actual motion or just a proposition?
It's a proposition.
Okay. Sean? Yeah, no? Okay, Jacob?
Yeah, and I would also say that I think this would be a great issue for the Committee on AU Dining to take up whenever they so meet. I think I remember, I don't remember, but whenever they decide to meet, I think this would be a great opportunity for them to take up. So just adding that in.
Bobby?
Go ahead and make that motion to add in a whereas clause, second to last whereas clause. So right before the last one, which is on the second page. Or not whereas, resolved. This is the second to last clause overall. Yeah, so maybe for the resolved. That should AU Dining and AU Auxiliary Services see, patently
What?
reject,
What'd you say, patently?
reject the resounding will of students.
Under what?
The resounding will of students against more expensive requirements. And propose such increased requirements to the Board of Trustees anyway. Student government implores, or would implore, student government would implore the Board of Trustees to reject higher requirements.
Is that the wording we should see?
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
I hear a second. Is there discussion? Curtis?
I think that's a great addition. It's a safe mechanism just in case the current meal plan proposal is sent to the board of trustees. So if no one has any further points, I move to end discussion on this resolution.
On the amendment, sure. All those in favor of closing debate on the amendment and moving to vote, say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed, say nay. All those in favor of adopting what's in yellow, say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed, say nay. And the chair, the ayes have it. Now we're back on the resolution as a whole. Any other discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, we will move to vote without objection. All those in favor of adopting 1819-001 as it is currently written, say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed, say nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the resolution is adopted.
No, that was number 2. We just moved it up.
Oh, you moved it up.
Don't forget to remember that resolution. You see the job in the last close.
Yeah. All right, moving to Directive 1819-003. Sponsor like to speak on the directive.
We've got all the legislation today. Let's see, this one is about Deputy Leadership Fund. So in the spring semester, the Undergraduate Senate creates stipends for student government in the next academic year. So last May, when we made the stipends, the Vice President-elect, Leila, who was here earlier, came to us and said, the deputy directors in my organizations, KPU, some Women's Initiative and Founders Day, put in a lot of work, almost as much as directors, but they don't get stipends. So I propose this Deputy Leadership Fund, where they can get stipends. And how it works is that it's a collective pool of money. It ended up being $3,300, where the Vice President, in coordination with those department directors, can assign from this $3,300 dole out stipends to deputy directors. And so we added rules to this because we wanted it to actually work. We've had collective stipend pools like this before, where it's a pool of money that's supposed to be doled out to individual members of student government. We've had one called the Directive Fund, which applies to just everybody in student government for many years, but it's never been used because no one knew how to use it because there were no rules. So we added these rules, the Finance Committee, and one of the rules said that once the Vice President decides on what the allocations would be, she sends it to the Undergraduate Senate to get approved. That didn't happen. It's not a huge deal, but I'm just submitting this directive to retroactively approve those allocations so that we set a precedent and a tradition that this is how it works. Because the point of it is that this keeps working in years ahead. So I would like to establish the tradition now so that these rules just don't fall away, because that happens a lot. So yeah, that's that.
Questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, we'll move to discussion. Discussion on the directive. Curtis?
I think this is good. So,
Other-
to close, I move to close the floor.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to add as a point of discussion on this directive that if you suspect that there's not going to be a lot of discussion, it actually takes more time to do a motion to close debate, because if there's no discussion, we just automatically close debate. And that's my point of discussion.
Further discussion on the directive. Seeing none, we'll move to close debate. We'll move to vote without objection. All those in favor of adopting Directive 1819-003 as it is currently written, say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed, say nay. Pin the chair, the ayes have it, and the directive is adopted. Moving to 1819-004. Would the sponsor like to speak on this?
Yeah, so same thing as I said before, when the Senate creates the stipends in the spring, they also create the budget. And one of the line items on the budget has historically been a discretionary fund for the vice president to use, just their own personal slush fund, for them to put on events that aren't within the purview of KPU or SUB or Women's Initiative or WI. Leila uses these for the programming breakfasts and the barbecue. Now, when the Finance Committee was making this budget last year, they got proposals from different people, the president-elect, the secretary-elect and so on, about what their fund should be. Now, no one submitted a proposal for the vice president's fund, so we just had to use our own records. And we looked on the AOSG website and looked how much spending had been from that fund in the previous year to figure out how much money was needed. And that fund was allocated $4,000 that year, but from the records we saw, had only spent $700. So we said that's way too much money. So based on the $700 of spending, we felt comfortable giving them $1,400 because that's double. It turns out though that those records we were looking at were incomplete and that this fund actually needs more money than that. So Leila came to me this week and said, Bobby, I only have $200 left and I've got all these events to do. So she sent me all the costs for her events in the future. And with the $200 that she already has, she needs like $1,978 more. So I just rounded that up to $2,000 and that's that.
Questions? Curtis?
How much money is currently in SG restricted?
Oh yeah, forgot about that. So restricted is our savings account. It's maintained by student activities. When we have money left over at the end of the year that we haven't used, it moves into restricted. How restricted works is that if anybody wants to use the money out of it, they go to the Senate and say, Senate, I would like to use this money out of restricted, and the Senate says okay or not. And the student activities doesn't tell anybody, including the comptroller, how much money is restricted, so I don't know. We are required to maintain, I think, $15,000 in there, so they'll tell us if we're getting too low. But yeah, no one knows except student activities.
It's restricted. Curtis?
So, Senator Zisman, can we possibly add more money to the VP fund, considering that she does have class and school councils to consider, and I believe the 1,900 figure only covers her programming breakfast.
Yes,
and
programming breakfast, the barbecue, and the transition brunch.
yes, which does not account for a big portion of her council, as stated in the bylaws, that the vice president's office has class and school councils. You're the president of one.
Indeed.
Same here, so why not add more money to account for possible requests from the class and school council presidents?
Yeah, so when we were making the budget last year on the finance committee, we could have added money, like a line item for class and school councils, and we decided not to because class and school councils historically have been really inactive, and we have no idea how much work they would put on for events, so we didn't give them any money. Now, if class and school councils do want some money, I would encourage my colleagues, the other presidents of the class and school councils, I'm the president of the class of 2019 council, to come before the Senate and ask for money from restricted. But in the meantime, for VP funds, I'm just going to go with what Leila needs for her upcoming events.
Jacob?
Yeah, I think if the vice president has already laid out a plan and she says this is what she needs, I think that's what we go with. And I agree with what Senator Zitzman said about school councils.
Is that a question?
Would you agree that I agree?
I do agree. You agree? I agree.
Curtis?
So, Senator Zisman, you're saying that class and school council presidents should come before the undergraduate senate and informally ask, or do they have to have a senator to represent them?
I extend the invitation to all class and school council presidents to come to me as the finance chair if they want some money. If I think that the project is worthwhile, I will write up a directive giving them some money for restricted.
Curtis?
So you will be working with the acting comptroller on this matter?
On this matter? Like this one?
Yes, because it states in the bylaws that the comptroller or the vice president has the ability and the power to allocate funds to class and school councils.
Okay.
But you're the director in the Senate, and that's not necessarily in your power.
Well, I would respectfully disagree.
By the bylaws.
I think I'm one of the world's leading experts on the AOSG governing documents, and it is certainly in my authority to introduce directives before the Senate, which is what I was referring to, and neither the vice president nor the comptroller has that authority. So on this matter, the one that we're actually talking about, I did talk with Milan about it. He got CC'd on all the emails and creation of this directive, and if class and school councils want some money, they can either go to Milan and say, is there any money in another account, like general or whatever that you can give me? That could be Milan's job. If they want something out of restricted, that's managed by the Senate. So again, I extend the invitation to all of them to come to me. They all have my email address to ask me, I would like some money from restricted.
Other questions? Curtis?
So those are the two avenues for class and school councils. They can either go to Milan, when he's the acting comptroller, or to Comptroller Gladden and request the comptroller's office for money, or they could go to you for the SG restrict, correct?
Well, they can get creative, they can fundraise, they can go to Milan or Lila to get some money out of those accounts that they manage. They can come to me to get out of restricted, yes. And I would hope that we can save further discussions for class and school councils for another day, because this meeting has gone on for quite some time.
Jacob?
Senator Zitzman, would you agree that this matter is related simply to just what Vice President Najaffi has laid out to you in her plans for spending money?
Now it theoretically could be expanded to matters beyond that, but this directive, I'm just concerned with Vice President's events.
Other questions? Seeing none, moving to discussion. Any discussion on the directive? Seeing none, we'll move to vote without objection. All those in favor of adopting Directive 1819-004 as it is written, say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed, say nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the directive is adopted. Any further new business for the Senate? Seeing none, moving to old business. Seeing no old business, moving to public comment. Any member of the public wishing to speak? Seeing no public, we will move to good of the order. First two executives for the good of the order. Seeing no executives, we'll move to Senate for the good of the order. Any senators? Senator Newland, Piper.
That's me. Hey guys, fun is official. The fun
Oh, here we go!
We're excited. Let me know if you have thoughts. Thank you.
Sean.
I just wanted to say I'm very grateful to be part of this community, AUSG Undergraduate Senate. I was very happy with the spirited debate that went on, and thankful we kept it all respectful. And just for everyone who signed my card, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. So yeah, my love and my love to all of you. Thank you.
And Lisa?
I know that's in DI, can you raise your hand?
I think that's a list.
Okay.
Bobby?
Yeah, so, let's see. Trevor already mentioned the governing documents commission that Suma works, so I was going to mention that, but that's already taken care of. And Trevor also reminded me the other day that it says in the bylaws that since I'm the most senior member of the Senate, I am supposed to help all of you if you have any questions about like writing legislation, because he's pointed out that none of you have written legislation yet. I think that's just fine because you guys have been active in other areas, like outside of like parliamentary procedure and like getting things through the Senate officially. But it is nice, number one, like to get like the official institutional stamp of approval on your project, and also to like secure the information somewhere so that people in the future can look back at your project and pick back up on it. Those are both reasons to like incorporate Senate legislation into your advocacy projects. So just putting it out there that if any of you, how do I do this, or do you have any advice or whatever, that's supposed to be my job. So there I am.
There, Terry.
So I'm working on like a social media page called Student Voice Agent Committee of Fun, and if anyone's interested in like helping me or participating in that, just come to me because.
Curtis?
Thank you to the Undergraduate Senate for first reaffirming that American University is an institution that is inclusive of all communities and all peoples. And I think it's really important that we pass, that resolution concerning the incident at CER, just because it's not something that we want to condone on our campus, and it's really important for us to stand by our communities of color at American University. That's really important. And also to reaffirm our commitment to the affordability of a college education. And I really hope that the university, the correct officials are notified of these resolutions that we passed today, because I did state in, the resolution to condemn the Confederate flag on AU's campus. I did mention a point, whereas Ross Carlson, who Senator Zitzman had mentioned, how we got him confused to be an AU administrator. And it's really important that, when we address people, we address the correct people in consideration. Just because Ross Carlson is not officially a part of the AU administration, of course he works with AU administrators, including Anne Marie Powell, very closely. But at the same time, whose power was it to kick out the person with the Confederate flag hoodie? And I think that AUPD could have easily asked the person in question to leave. So I think that's really important. And last but not least, considering how Ross Carlson is technically not an AU employee, I think that in the future, the Senate should consider a resolution to encourage the university to not outsource its production of dining services, just because I've been doing a little research, and Boston College, for example, their institution is very similar to ours, and it's really important that the AU dining workers are actually a part of our American University, community on paper, and also where they get their paychecks from. So that's really important. Thank you so much.
Jacob?
Yeah, I agree with you, Curtis. I think these are two issues that the Committee on Campus and Student Life and the Committee for AU Dining can tackle. And I look forward to meeting soon, since I'm a member of both of them. So looking forward to having those meetings soon.
Other senators, should I go to the order? Great, yeah. So remember tomorrow, if you're interested, tell everyone that you know that RHA is having their version of the dining plan announcement. That's Let's Formal 8 o'clock tomorrow, I believe. I think there will be food, so if you're looking for that. Double check your profile on the website. It should be up with your photo, and if it's not, then email Alex about that. And besides that, everyone have a good week. Have a good Valentine's Day for those that are celebrating.
It's love. We all
I mean, it's self-love. Yeah, I'm all about self-love, But yeah, if there's nothing else, then we are adjourned.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Is the camera on?
Yeah, you're like right in front of her.